Is that it? Are we really live? Let's see. Let's see if it worked. Boy, does the internet here suck.
I'm so high.
I know you are, but you're also on the air, so hold on a second.
Sorry. I didn't say that. I wish that we're on the air now. I'm going to whisper this.
Hold on, folks. I got to log in.
Let's see.
Is there a little supply of these waters anywhere?
So, yeah, I got some.
Oh, thanks.
This is the longest, most unprofessional pause in the history of my podcast career. But I had to do it because Jamie's running the mic here, so we're making sure that everything is going well. It seems like we're live and online. This episode of Joe Rogan Experience Podcast is brought to you by Audible.com. If you've never been to Audible, they have thousands and thousands of audio books available for download. And they have one thing that's really cool. It's a WhisperSync application for the Kindle Fire HD. And what it is the way it works, you're reading a book. Say you stop on page 32 and you go to sleep. Well, when you get up in the morning and get in your car, it syncs up to your cell phone. So it automatically starts an audio version of the book right where you left off.
Wait.
That's a good idea, man.
So,
Yeah.
so can you do that? Say that one more time?
There's Bryan Callen might be high.
I don't know what you're talking about.
There's an application called WhisperSync.
Okay.
And the way it works is when you have one of those Amazon Kindle HDs, those badass.
I have one.
Okay, then you can use this. When you're reading a book on it, if it has a companion audio book, with this WhisperSync, it allows you to sync it up to your smartphone. So you have a smartphone, right? iPhone,
Sure.
whatever you have. Syncs it up so then when you get in the car, it starts playing an audio companion to the book you're reading. Like
I've always wanted that.
read by a professional actor.
Yeah, I listen.
That's a good idea. But you have those two. You have the competing versions though, because listening to a book's a little bit different than reading it.
Right.
So you'd be getting parts that you listened to and parts that you read.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
It can be good unless the guy sucks at reading books. Like, you ever read...
There is that.
No, but I would love it, man. You'd burn through way more books.
Oh, yeah. Way more.
Because you don't want to go start a new one sometimes. You just want to keep doing the one you're doing.
Yeah,
You know?
and it makes use of time and in traffic and
I listen to books all the time.
If you're one of those elliptical riders, and just get on that thing and it's great.
What else you got, Joe?
It's just an ad. Just an ad that I have
Just
to
an ad,
do.
a WhisperSync.
But if you go to Audible,
I do like it.
I think it's audible.com/Joe. I should know this, right? Let's let me see if I get it right.
WhisperSync. I'm doing that.
Dude, it's the shit. It's beautiful. I love audiobooks, but I love the fact that the two of them tie in together.
Me too.
You know? I mean, it's just such a
Incredible.
brilliant idea.
You get a lot of stuff done. Do they have the Golden Globes on tape?
I don't know if they do. I'll cry. But anyway, if you go there, I would tell you, but my internet is fucked here. We're getting a pipe drilled into this location. We have to get a 100 megabyte video and audio capable, like constantly on fat pipe. Because what we have is DSL, and it's fucking terrible. We're like living in the Stone Ages here.
DSL.
Yeah.
Whatever. Do you use that when you go hunting? Hey, do you ever bring you bring satellite phones? That's right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we talked about that. I wonder what kind of radiation I got from that.
Oh, you'd probably be dead soon.
I never heard of. Yeah, I never heard of what's. But the thing is, no one would be able to really afford to do that much damage to themselves on a satellite phone until the price comes down a little bit.
That's true.
You get in a fight with your wife on there, you're looking at.
Huh?
you get in a fight with your wife on a satellite phone. That's expensive.
That's an expensive
fight.
Yeah, you do not want to have that. Go to audible.com/Joe, and what I believe it is, I believe you get one free audiobook and a free month. I wish I could read it off the website, but like I said, this piece of shit internet is not letting us even open up web pages. Jamie, Jesus Christ. We're not even uploading anything. There it is. Try Audible free for 30 days and get a free audiobook. So check it out. And I think that application is fucking brilliant. We're also brought to you by Onnit.com. If you go to ONNIT, enter in the code name Rogan, you will save 10% off any of the supplements. I just gave Steve Rinella the gift pack. The sweet box.
I love that gift pack. I'm a little jealous. I thought it was mine, and my heart sank a little.
I should have had one for you.
I got you something. I go, you got me a present? You slow motion reach over to Rinella like, here you go.
Sweetie.
Other friend who takes me hunting.
Sweetie, I get you some all the time.
Get it.
You can have some, too. It's just that was the last packet.
Sorry, I get crazy.
And someone stole the buffalo jerky out of that one, too.
What the flip?
We have this delicious buffalo jerky we sell now.
Dude, you know what I got into today for the first time? My deer back straps. Those are great fillets because I was eating all the leg meat and I was like, this is good, this is good. Those back straps are ridiculous.
You're eating all the trimmings first.
Yeah, that's what I was doing.
That's good. Most people eat all the favorite parts, and then they.
Oh, dude, that back strap is crazy good.
It's good to work that way.
I was frying it up in butter and salt.
It's
delicious.
Yeah, I would like to eat that forever.
Steve, how could you forget our bear meat? You smoked bear meat.
You know what? I'm telling you. My wife we had a baby a month ago, and like I said, I've been sleeping on the floor next to the bed in a sleeping bag, and all night it's just like I'm like getting interrupted, and I'm doing and I can't remember anything. And last night, at one point, I'm like, you know what? I know I'll forget the bear meat. I should go put the bear meat in my bag now. But then I'm like, but that's then you start thinking about like hours without refrigeration,
right?
And I just thought I'll just get up and remember it. And it's sitting there right now, and it was good too, man. I did a sample slice off it.
Really? What's it taste like?
It tastes like really dense. Well, just the way I did it tastes like really dense ham,
But you said...
Or more like a prosciutto kind of thing, but darker.
Really?
Darker, yeah.
Now, when you say you smoke it, that means you're not cooking it, so I could get...
No, hot smoke it. So I brine it.
Oh, okay.
For about a week, and then tie it real tight,
Is there a commercial version of this? Can you get, can you buy...
no one's done it, man. No one's done it.
Wow.
There's so many, when you get wild game in a restaurant, it's either imported, come from Scotland or New Zealand and be deer, but the domestic the indigenous animals here, people have done wild game versions, like you can get elk or deer or whatever.
Right.
But I think that the bear thing, I've never heard of anybody trying to do commercially produced bear.
No, of course, you
can't sell wild. You can't sell wild game. You gotta have it be inspected and produced in a controlled environment. But I think that it would just be so expensive to put weight on a bear.
How gangster would it be if you were farming bears to eat them?
I don't know that it would be illegal because one time I looked into
bear.
I had this thing. I wrote this article about.
That would be creepy.
Eating. I wrote this article about. I went to Vietnam and did a piece about eating dogs around the Tet holiday because it's really auspicious to eat a dog in the last days of the lunar year. And I was writing my article. And I had this line in there in my article where I'm like, of course it's illegal to sell dog meat in the U.S., but in other, some line like that. And this fact checker was like, well, how do you know, show me where you got that it's illegal to sell dog meat in the U.S.? I'm like, well, I didn't. I mean, of course it is. You can't sell dog meat in the U.S. He's like, well, we need to see something. You got to back it up. And I started looking into it in a real way, and I called someone from the USDA and other things, and there's nothing, man. There's California and New York, it's illegal to sell dog meat. It's the only two states where someone ever really pushed it. Wow. In Michigan, the rule is you can't sell dog meat unless it's properly labeled. And this guy from the USDA, now this is a conversation I had with a guy from the USDA, and he told me this. He said that within their guidelines, there's no reason you could not have an inspected dog production facility. Of course someone's going to come after. The minute you did it, you'd probably have tons of people coming after you for different reasons, but there's nothing per se that's one cannot produce commercially produced dog meat.
It's fascinating how we commit like that to being really kind to one specific animal, and that animal almost
that was our domestic
family.
Our pets, right?
Yeah, the 3 horse places. There was 3 horse places that all got shut down some years ago now.
Yeah.
I think they're opening one back up.
A lot of it is I think if you open dogs are very emotional for people. If you do a movie and
you inspire emotions in people.
Yeah, Todd Phillips was saying when he did that movie, what's it called, Road Trip, and Robert Downey Jr. spits on Zach's dog.
Right.
that was a big conversation because how do you get somebody who spits on a dog? How do you then kind of get them to be sympathetic? Americans
this all got on an awesome tangent. I got to finish this stupid fucking commercial.
Yeah, when we get back around to it, I want to remember. I want to talk about the movie Lone Wolf McQuade.
Okay.
Oh, it's an awesome movie.
Yeah, they
Dude,
kill his family.
Chuck
Everything.
Norris,
And he doesn't
David
get really
Carradine.
mad until they kill his dog.
Exactly.
They kill his dog. He's like, no, everybody's gonna pay.
Anyway, go to onnit.com and buy some shit. We got a lot of cool stuff. The end. Use the code Rogan, save some money. All right, hit the music. Let's see if we can do this, Jamie.
Nice.
Joe Rogan Podcast, check it out.
The Joe Rogan Experience.
Train by day, Joe Rogan Podcast by night, all day.
Alrighty. It looks like everything is a go, except the image. Are you seeing the image? Because all I'm seeing is that the opening screen. You see the image?
In a second.
Oh, is there like a big ass delay?
There it goes.
Do you see it online? Because I don't see it online. All I see is the opening screen.
It looks okay. From here. I'll check online.
But are you seeing it on Ustream? Because on Ustream I don't see it. We'll figure this out, ladies and gentlemen. Brian has a new kind of AIDS that he created himself in his own body, so don't feel sorry for him. Not you. I'm talking about Brian, my employee.
Yes.
I don't know what happened to the poor boy. He got strep, I guess, apparently.
Did he?
Yeah, he's had it before. He gets it.
Strep.
Poor guy. So heal up, little buddy. He's hurting right now. He can't even talk. That shit's bad.
Yeah, it's
A lot of flu going around, man.
Yeah, it's a strong.
Yeah, man, it's all over the news.
I didn't get a flu shot. Did you?
I figured you did. I feel like I remember you telling me something like that.
I think you have to keep your immune system strong. I think it's very, very important. But I don't necessarily know that they've got that whole flu shot thing down.
Right.
There's a lot of talk that people actually get the flu because they take a flu shot. I've heard people say that because apparently it can make you sick or make you weak.
The CDC, what are they saying? It's 64% effective this year.
64%.
Oh, really?
I mean, I'm
Which means
talking
they
out
must
of my
take a bunch
ass.
of mugs. They must take a bunch of mugs, give them the flu shot, and then spit on them. Have a guy with the flu spit on them, and 64% of those guys didn't get the flu.
I'm completely talking out of my ass because I don't really. I mean, I'm sure it does some good, and especially maybe for some people. Maybe some people could use the boost of a vaccination.
Yeah.
But I think that from what I've heard, there's so many different strains, and it's really hard for them to predict which strain is hitting
though,
people.
Yeah.
I think they give you an amalgam of different ones. Because
They do.
Of that.
Is that what they do?
Yeah, but usually there's one strong, very severe flu, whether it's swine flu or this year
Right.
is supposed to be particularly severe. So they'll I guess they inject you with a dead version, but it still
Yeah.
can give you a fever and stuff because it's a new agent in your body.
And isn't it fucked that they all come from farms? It's like almost all of them are
yeah.
the chicken flu or
Yeah.
the swine
Oh, like things
flu.
jumping over from
That's why.
From
That's why.
livestock.
That's why in Guns, Germs, and Steel, Jared Diamond says that agricultural societies breathe way nastier germs because animals.
Yeah.
It mutates on from the cowpox, smallpox. He said, and the minute that indigenous hunter-gatherer tribes, because they were small, always moving, so epidemics couldn't really build into those environments. Usually, you're kind of healthy being a hunter.
Yeah, and then that's why, like here in this continent, like when they passed through the Arctic, like Siberia and stuff, they came down really clean.
That's right, because they
Super
leave their
scattered
leave their
populations,
feces where they are and they move, whereas farmers live within their shit and other
Wallowing in
animal
their
shit.
own
Yeah.
filth, man.
So
Yeah.
that when they would come in, these big agricultural societies, not only did they have systems of governments because they could be more, they could grow more because they could grow their own food and stay in one place, but they breathe nasty germs, man. In fact, by some accounts, the Native Americans, by the time after Cortez came back, or Columbus, or one of them, Columbus came, and they were talking about huge populations of in the Mississippi Delta and stuff. You know more about this than I do, Steve. But then,
Just gone.
when they came back in 15 years, nobody was there. It was literally, and they think that
Yeah, and the towns are still sitting there like, what happened to everybody?
Yeah, epidemic killed off 95%
They're
of
all on
the Native
vacation.
Americans.
God damn.
By the
But I had my flu shot though, and I'll tell you why. Because we have like having that little baby.
yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like any little thing that any paranoid thing I could say about having a flu shot, like if you came home and gave
Yeah, you don't want to
Do you know what I mean? Like, I'd rather have an increased chance of something weird happening to me than I don't think you can give the flu to a little baby. I think
they have their mother's immune system, and the breast milk is breast milk is pretty amazing.
So she probably got the flu shot through her mom anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's incredible how quickly it like brings them back from colds and stuff like that. There's everything their little body needs in that.
That's right.
It's really insane that your body makes food.
I know.
You know? Really, when you see a woman's body produce food, it's a trip. It's like really hard to wrap your head around.
Yeah, I had a buddy that would use it like for coffee creamer and stuff.
Okay, that guy's a freak.
I talked a lot about how I was going to drink some, and I talked so much like before I first got talked so much garbage about. I was like, oh, I'm going to drink it and da. And when the time came,
I'm going to tell you guys.
I couldn't
when
do
we're
it.
When we're off the air, I'm
do
going to tell
it,
you a story.
And it's hard to get back to sucking on those things too. It's strange, you know.
Yeah.
It's like once you think of them as
it makes it
where the
kinda
food
switches.
comes back.
Yeah.
I mean, where the food comes out for the baby, and then all of a sudden you're like, yeah, baby, like come on,
It's a different thing.
It becomes strange. It's like, wait a minute, what is that place exactly?
Maybe that's when a man becomes a man when the first time he's.
It just takes, there's like a state of grace where it's like for like 6 months at least after she stops breastfeeding, you leave them alone.
So true.
But you can't mess with them during the breastfeeding phase. It's just rude.
Yeah.
It's creepy.
When you have kids,
Yeah, and you're moving in on your kids' resources.
when you have children, and you see a woman go through that. You do look at women differently. That's for sure. Like when I was in my 20s, girls were, they were soft boys. They were like, "Oh, look, play. I'll play with her. How come you're not just like me? Why isn't your mind like mine? Why can't I get along with you? What do you mean you fell asleep during Raging Bull? I have to break up with you. That's outrageous.
Yeah.
How do you not like fighting and stuff? But I thought you were me with tits. That's weird. But then you realize they're completely different.
It's totally different species.
Totally different species, man.
Yeah, that's my take has always been that we're never really the idea that we're gonna like somehow or another be able to understand what it's like to be pregnant or to even want to be pregnant.
What?
The whole idea of being attracted to a guy, it's like so alien to us
not
that
for Steve,
we
but I know-
really
we talked
don't.
about this earlier, like guys that say like we're pregnant.
Yeah,
it's so
what?
annoying.
Dude,
I said to Steve, he goes, "Yeah, my wife just had a baby, right?" And I was like, "That's the way to say it. My wife just had a baby. Don't be like we just had a baby. You did
No,
not."
we are pregnant is the worst. We
Oh,
are
it
pregnant.
annoys me.
That's the worst. We just had a baby's okay because you're together.
Yeah,
I would say my wife just had a baby.
Yeah,
I might say we just had a baby. I definitely wouldn't say we're pregnant though.
Yeah.
That's stupid.
It's annoying.
It's supposed to be like
You're a dork.
it's supposed to be a solidarity thing.
Or how about guys who have sympathetic pregnancies
dork.
with their breasts hurt?
That's a guy just giving up his balls way too quick.
Way too quick.
He's just ready. He's ready to chop them off.
I
He's
don't
pulling
trust
on
those
them himself. He's stretching them out himself. He's like, where do you want to cut? High, low? Do we go
Don't
through the
trust
middle?
you, brother. Don't trust you.
Yeah.
You're not coming hunting with us.
You crafty bitch. We're pregnant. Shut up. Shut
Yeah.
up, stupid. You'll cry when the shit hits the fan. I know you will. I know you'll break.
Right. Shut up. The deer are smelling your estrogen.
You will break under pressure, bitch.
Yeah.
Okay?
You and your bitch tits.
You're going to fucking sink this canoe. Stupid.
Do you notice colors in fabric too?
Yeah, what is that when a dude will like try to feng shui your house? Oh man, you know what you really should do? You should move all this over to here and change. Who the fuck are you, man? If I go over a man's house, I expect to see just fucking. If the dude's single, I expect chaos.
Dude, of
I
course.
expect total chaos.
What?
You know?
Do you remember? I remember I came to your house one time. This was like literally you were 28. Your house was. He was doing news radio, and he lived way out in the middle of nowhere. And his house was so messier than mine, and mine is messy. But there was just nothing was put
Yours
away.
is
And I go,
messy now?
No. But it used to be.
In the old
but
days,
I said to Joe, I go, well, why don't you get a maid? He goes, I don't want somebody rummaging around my stuff. This is my mess. It was a cyclone, fucking cyclone. I'd never
It
seen
was
him
crazy.
Like it. It was great.
Yeah. I couldn't take care of myself. But that's how almost every one of my friends' houses are. If I went over to your place when you were single, it's the same shit.
What?
You didn't even have a doorknob.
No.
He didn't have a doorknob.
I didn't.
He didn't have a doorknob. I'm not bullshitting. He had a place in Venice, and he didn't have a fucking doorknob.
He was
and
appalled.
one time while he was...
happened? Did it have a doorknob when you rented it?
Dude, I literally didn't have a doorknob, and I just figured nobody's going to break into my house. Telling the story about the...
And so one day, he fucking wakes up, and there's a homeless lady inside his house cooking breakfast.
She, literally like cooking. She goes, "You got it going on." I'm like, "What do you mean? Well, I got it going on." I actually wasn't. I didn't wake up. I came in, and my neighbors go, "There's a woman in your house cooking," and I come in. She's got a meal like prepared. She's got my pit bulls are like, "Hey man," she was feeding my dogs.
And now you guys have children, and
She wasn't. Yeah, unfortunately, she wasn't that attractive back then, though. Listen, but I didn't. The being attractive wasn't like really on the criteria. If you were a girl, I was like, all right, I'm in.
If you go to Ari Shafir's house, he tells me that sometimes he doesn't change his sheets for 6 months.
That's guys. Dude, in
I
college.
used to change my sheets only when I changed girlfriends. The only time I would ever wash, I'd be like, oh yeah, I should probably wash sheets.
It's
Well,
true.
especially if you get used to living camping style and you're hunting all the time like you are.
fuck.
Like, you know.
I didn't hunt it in college. We kept dishes in the sink for so long in college, me and my two other roommates. I swear to God that we had shit growing out of the drain. We had sprouts in the drain. We'd grown fucking sprouts.
Did I
and
ever show you that
mushrooms.
thing
Put
that
them on
grew
your
in my
salads and
toilet?
stuff.
Did I ever show you the thing that grew in my
No.
toilet? There was apparently a crack in the pipe below my toilet, and a root got in there and
Oh, yeah, I can
grew
picture that,
to
yeah.
the size of like a muskrat or
Whoa.
something. It was crazy. It was like this long. And it was growing. It's like my toilet wouldn't flush, or it would drain really slowly.
Damn.
I couldn't figure out what it was. It was an organism living off my shit water.
That's wild.
Yeah.
I mean, we're literally living off my shit water and fat and thick like
Ugh.
a tree.
But it wasn't.
It looked like an animal.
Wait, it was. But it wasn't. It was a bark. A piece
No,
of
like a little root got
grew.
into the pipe, and then
Yeah. The root
Oh, yeah.
grew. The roots are crazy, man. They can grow through pipes, and they can. They,
yeah, like
they
you see
can
that stuff you
crack
add in called
foundations.
root killer.
Oh yeah.
That you flush down your toilet.
I don't know.
You know,
I don't know why I
on
was
something of
reminded.
being like really like, but I'm so fussy now and fastidious about my home now, because at a point you like identify with your home, you know.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
also you get tired.
And so
of the
now,
mess.
now I like everything's just exactly.
I think as you
like,
get older,
if I was at
you
home
wanna
right now,
simplify.
I'd be like lining these water
Yeah.
bottles
Yeah.
and stuff up, man.
Yeah, and you know you're a father, and you have children. You don't
Exactly.
want mess.
So I grew up
everywhere.
in a neat home.
But I don't
Then you take a
remember-
break, and then you go. Then you like act like your parents. You know, and you,
Yeah.
It's kind of true. Like
Be like neat.
I kind of grew up. Like I remember one day things had to be neat. I got tired of the mess, and things had to be ordered and simple and clear. I don't know when the fuck that happened to me, but I know it happened one day. I was like,
Just woke up.
this is
and-
messy. I need to. I don't know. I got tired of the mess. Or
Yeah.
something. Maybe it's hormonal.
You think so?
I don't know. Something. Fucking knows.
I just think it's smart. It's smart to have a clean environment. When your environment is clean, it makes you think better.
Yeah.
You know, if you're completely cluttered.
Yeah.
That's exactly. Largely, it's mental peace of mind.
Yeah.
Like when I get up, if I'm writing or whatever, and I get up, I can't write until the dishes and stuff are done.
Really?
And in a way, it's like a procrastination thing,
Yeah,
you
it
know,
is.
because it helps you put stuff off. Like if you were really diligent and really disciplined, you'd be able to just work through the mayhem.
Yeah.
You know, for me, everything's got to be like nice and buttoned up,
You know,
and then I
JJ
can think about it.
J.J. Abrams, you know, the guy who's directed and written everything
Yeah, yeah.
from he created Lost to like he's genius. And I just tested for a TV show with Greg Grunberg, who's in Heroes. He's his best friend since he was 3. And then Greg's a great guy. And he said that when he pitches J.J. Abrams an idea, J.J. goes, I don't want to hear it, write it. And he goes, I know, but I just want to hear it. I don't want to. No. And he goes, what are you doing? And he goes, the energy that you're using right now, all the energy that you're excited about, should be in. You should be doing this with that energy. Why are you not doing this with the energy? Why are you not writing that energy into the idea? Because this is procrastination. You waiting for my point of view. That's procrastination. It's kind of cool.
Yeah.
Like he wastes no time. All his energy is that we use to worry or to think about other things. It goes right into his work.
Channel down to
Yeah.
man,
If
onto
he
it.
could
Carlin
only
talked
get
about
that
that.
Jack son of a bitch to stop dialing in the last season.
You talking about
The pilot guy, he dialed it in the last season. I gave up on Lost because of him.
Oh, I didn't see it. I've been obsessed with Breaking Bad, man. I'm almost done with season
Lost
4.
is a brilliant. I'm just fucking around about the pilot if he's out there listening. It was one episode that was ridiculous. I forget what it was. It was like they were by a puddle that brings people back to life or something like that. And he's just standing there like, "What the fuck am I doing?" Because towards the end, Lost got like they went off the crazy train.
well,
Like
you
people
run
were
out of
coming
ideas,
back to
right?
life and shit.
Yeah, I never watched that show.
Time
Yeah.
traveling back and forth. I mean, it was like, all right, where's the fucking polar bear, man? Whatever happened to those polar bears? Where are those?
At the end,
things?
they ended up being in purgatory, right? Wasn't that what the?
I didn't even stick around to the end. I'm like,
Whatever.
The Wind Monster. Remember the Wind Monster? Come and fuck everything up. That was a great show.
It
Great
was scary.
show.
You were wondering what was going on.
It must be so hard to do something like that. Do a show like that just to create it.
Keep coming up with ideas.
Oh, Jesus
you know?
Christ!
And basically, you have to keep up. You have to keep surprising your audience
For
every
years,
week. Yeah.
it was a brilliant show. For years, like a brilliant show that really left you like hanging on the edge of your seat.
Right.
I got onto it in the DVD form though, so I got to watch like a whole shitload
It's
of
the only
them
way
at
to do
once.
it, though, right?
Yeah, it was awesome. I watched like the first 2 seasons like in a row.
Yeah.
You know, so it was great. And then like you don't get tortured.
I got to do that with Homeland.
Yeah, that style of TV watch is changing the TV experience in a way.
You think so?
Well, yeah, because I think that, like, just the idea of every, of a serial being like everyone has like this cliffhanger element, and there'd be like time to anticipate. But now, I think it's largely generational. But now you get turned on to something, and you're like, well, I'm not gonna do that. I'll just go rent them and watch the whole thing all the way through.
Right.
And it's just a way different experience than kind of like watching a little bit and then for a week thinking about it and watching a little bit. And I think you burn out faster. Every time I get into a show, like if we get interested in a show, my wife and I'll just go Netflix it or rent it or whatever, and we burn out before you would, because it's not meant to be. You're not supposed to sit there and watch 4 half hours in a row some night.
Unless you're Joe Rogan.
Do you know what I mean?
I know you can do that.
Yeah, I can watch it easy.
Yeah.
I got a problem.
And then you get 8 episodes in, and you're like, I'm over it.
Some shows,
it wasn't playing out the way it was supposed to.
What are your favorite? Do you have a favorite TV show?
Like really, I just don't take in a lot of. I don't take in a lot of TV, but if the show I like, I feel like they quit making them. I like Curb Your Enthusiasm.
Yeah, that's a great show.
But I don't watch. I just don't.
You like comedies, right? That's because
I like stuff that's so far. I like stuff that's just so far removed from anything in my life or anything that I do or think about. And so just like a show like that, like a comedy like that, is funny to me. But I just don't. I just have never been that interested in watching TV shows. I don't know why. I like to watch movies a lot. But then I tend more to I'll watch a lot of foreign movies. I don't know. I just want stuff that's just like coming at me from way outside.
There's so many good like drama TV shows now. There's so many shows that it's like
from Dexter to Breaking Bad to Homeland.
It's because it's so hard to make movies right now, right?
You think so all that energy is going into TV.
All the time.
You're getting these like that Homeland show. That's a fucking unbelievably good show. I've
only seen 4 episodes, and once I'm done with Breaking Bad, I'm on that.
Dude, it gets better. It keeps getting better. That show is incredible.
That's amazing.
That's a good fucking show.
Yeah.
And it's like, this is like a movie, like you're watching, like this is like movie quality shit.
Right.
Whereas before, you were watching like the $6 Million Man. You know what I mean? Like this fucking TV. At one point, it was like filled with dog shit.
We're like in the golden age of TV in some ways.
I really think so.
Yeah.
But the thing I always feel about TV, like when I'm watching dramas, I always feel like I'm watching people. Like oftentimes, I feel like it's being written from an angle where they don't really understand the world they're writing about.
Like period piece type shit.
No, like even the thing like the HBO vampire show.
Oh, that
where it's like a bunch of dudes like imagining the South. It's like, I got it. It'll be they all act. You know what I mean? And it just kind of winds up being like, has any of you ever? And I don't know. I'm not like. Don't know much about this, but I know enough to know that it just feels like someone picturing what it would be like in their world.
Well, the guy who created
if I lived in the South, I would have it be like this.
Well, Alan Ball was from the South, but he was a gay man in the South, and I think if you watch True Blood, vampires, that's his experience. I think I don't mean to put. I know Alan, so I don't want to put words in his mouth, but I think it's what being a vampire in the South like that takes place is what it felt like to be gay when you were younger, and it was a violent place.
Like really campy.
Yeah.
Really campy.
Yeah. I mean, True Blood, I think, was a book or something like that, but I think that at the end of the day, if you can you can see so much of what it was like to be gay as a young boy growing up in the South.
Yeah. You know what? Just knowing that alone made me make a watch from a fresh perspective.
That's what I believe. I saw a thing, and that's
I
what
think you just made that shit up.
No, I didn't.
It's good though either way.
I didn't. I wish I was like, did I
he
make
took comparative literature
I'm too
in
high
college.
to remember.
He took comparative literature in college. He's like, I feel like I'm going to do I'm going to do gender analysis of this TV show.
Yeah, but I'm too high to remember.
I find it fascinating, and I've been really fixated on this lately. How pussified movies and television are getting to the point where the vampires that we have, they're not like vampires. They're like, they could be kind of your buddy.
Yeah.
You know, they can hang out with you. And
It's like, it's like 90210 with vampires, man.
It's
yeah.
like, why? But why vampires? Like, why would you want to make like this horrific monster and change its nature and turn it into this romantic figure? Like,
Well-
what is? But my point is, what I'm freaking out about is that like there's this whole trend, like that Bourne movie. You know that Bourne Ultimatum or whatever the fuck it is. The new dude.
Yeah.
The new dude is pretty fucking
Jeremy
badass.
Renner.
Yeah, I like
Jeremy
that
Renner.
guy.
He's badass. Okay. He gets no pussy in the whole movie.
Yeah.
Okay?
Really?
He saves everybody. This girl's weeping. She's all over him. But there's never a kiss, never any desire on his part ever exhibited that he's even remotely attracted to these unbelievably hot women that he just keeps saving and they're falling in love with him. And he's just kind of like blank and nonchalant. Like, what the fuck is the message there? Like, are we becoming? Do we want our
Robotic or
superheroes
something,
to be robot men there to service women and keep them alive?
Yeah.
And that's like the ultimate goal, but no sex. At the end of the movie, they're sitting on a
but
boat together and
you
they're
almost got to
facing each
hand it
other.
to him for not throwing in a love interest, unless it was a love
It
interest.
was a love
Oh,
interest,
yeah, so
clearly.
still-
Yeah, I mean,
gotcha.
he's saving her. I mean, you know, the idea is that he's
I
not
think
really
you're-
in
I
love
think
with her.
you're
But
really-
the dude's single and she's
Yeah.
hot. I mean,
Yeah.
come on, what are we, stupid?
But
Are we
I
living
think
in
you're
a
right on.
That dude's
world?
good, though, man.
I think
It's
that's
amazing.
it's a really interesting observation though, because if you actually think about it, like the TV shows I've seen, even Homeland and certainly Breaking Bad, the sex is non-existent.
Yeah.
In fact, your heroes aren't even allowed to be lusty or any of that stuff. They're not allowed to be like
Homeland, there's a lot of fucking.
I don't know.
going on.
I only saw the first 5 episodes, so I don't know. But
They get their freak on.
oh, they do.
Don't you worry.
But it's just interesting how that I wonder if that's true. It sounds good anyway. As a
I just
topic,
feel like
you
there's
know?
some pussification going on a giant scale. There's like this toning down of male energy.
Well, look at fucking every show on NBC. Community, all those guys have never done a push-up. It's all about being.
Well, that's okay
you know.
too. I mean, that's not what bothers me. What bothers me when I see like suppression of male shit. Like I loved 007, like the James Bond movie.
Oh, yeah, I
because
see what
he
you're saying, yeah.
still gets laid.
Yeah.
He's a single secret agent out there killing, and he's drinking, and he's He's a
great
handsome
dichotomy,
man,
great
and
dichotomy.
women want to have sex with him.
Yeah.
Let's do this, okay? I enjoy a full superhero lifestyle
Yeah.
movie. I don't want a guy who, for whatever reason, is not sexually attracted to this chick he's saving.
Right.
This guy's a sociopath. He's a fucking psycho. He's just out there kicking ass and
Yeah.
doesn't want to get laid.
You don't want him to be like monastic too, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the beginning of the movie, like, comes out of the water and it's like it's freezing cold, but he's
Yeah.
naked. He's not even fucking. He's not even freaking out. He's not even shivering. He's just so powerful.
Were his nuts shriveled up?
No, you
couldn't
don't
even
really
tell,
see
yeah.
him that much.
You know,
but it's the
Bram
idea-
Stoker wrote Dracula in some ways as a reaction to the Victorian, the repressive Victorian age. So when Dracula would come in, he'd be this big, handsome guy, and a girl was sleeping, and he would bite her neck and drink her blood. It was very kind of the idea was she had an orgasm when she was being sucked dry. It was kind of like a very taboo book when it came out. It was kind of a rebuttal to how repressively sexual the Victorians were, and Bram Stoker wrote sort of that reaction to it.
You're making
Really?
me excited, Brian.
That's interesting. I
Yeah.
always thought it was just a fictional movie or a
No.
book, rather, written about vampires.
It was an angry kind
What
of
was the
reaction.
connection between Vlad Tepes? Because there was a Vlad the Impaler. He was
Yes.
the original
Yes.
Count Dracula.
They say that the idea was based on this Hungarian, I think maybe a prince or warlord or whatever.
he was an evil motherfucker.
He was probably a serial killer. Who did all kinds of horrible things.
He
you
would
know.
cook pieces of people and eat it in front of them.
Yeah.
He would put people on stakes. That's what they called him, Vlad the Impaler. He would shove stakes up their ass and then let them slowly writhe in pain.
Yeah, just a
and leave
sociopath.
them. He would leave them on these big pillars like all through the town.
Yeah.
He was an unbelievably evil guy. All the depictions and images of him are him dining with like all these men on stakes, like all around.
You hear
him.
about these, like I think it was Ivan the Terrible in Russia when whoever the artist was that did the Winter Palace. I think that was the Winter Palace. Like this beautiful, like this guy. It was a lifetime of about 20 years of his. It's like his opus. This great artist. I mean, and if you look at it, I think it's either the Winter Palace or this church, this incredible church in Russia. And when he was done with it, and he presented it to Ivan the Terrible. Ivan the Terrible was like, "This is the most incredible thing in the world. Thank you." And then he took his eyes out, so he couldn't do it for anybody else.
Yeah.
Oh, dude.
There's a good point that you could be like, you could be a serial killer and just get in the exact right situation.
Yeah.
Where you have a lot of power and just be able to just do it, but it'll just be people.
Who was that woman?
You know?
Do you remember that woman who's responsible for killing thousands? She was a noble woman, and she was a serial killer of young women. Wow. I gotta pull this up on Wikipedia because it's a fucking fascinating story.
It's horrible, man.
This lady.
But they say serial killers. There's a book called The Murder Room, and the guy who specializes in sadism and serial killers, he wrote what's called kind of like the double helix of the serial killer's profile.
Yeah.
And he said that a lot of serial killers will definitely be, I can't remember what the word was, but they become like, they drink your blood. The lowest rung, where you're the full-fledged boogeyman, they eat flesh and drink blood.
Elizabeth Bathory. That's this crazy bitch.
Where was she out of?
And what did she do?
She killed thousands of girls. She was Hungarian. Ugh. Yeah, they called her the Blood Countess. Apparently she just started killing chicks and really got to love it, and so would just torture them and kill them and find pretty girls, just torture them and kill them. We'd just kill thousands until they finally they didn't even kill her in the end. They locked her in a room. They gave her like a house imprisonment. Like she was such a noble woman.
She was a royal figure of some
Yeah,
sort. Yeah.
she was so. I mean, it was crazy fucking shit, man. I mean that they didn't even kill her. She killed thousands of chicks. They don't even know how many she killed.
Sadist, like.
Oh, unbelievably evil.
They're out there.
But yeah, Elizabeth Bathory. That's the chick's name.
A lot of times, serial killers like that have a particular taste. Like it's got to be a specific kind of person, you know.
Yeah, there's something that snaps, allows you to get a thrill off of killing a bunch of people. And there's a weird thing that happens to people with this whole royalty thing. The idea of royalty is fascinating.
That's been killing me lately because I don't know how you guys feel about it, but watching Americans get so gaga over the English royal family.
Yes. It drives me nuts. Man. It's so stupid.
It's bad enough when the English do it, but when Americans do it, oh my God.
That's their version of Kim Kardashian. It's the same fucking thing. Right. There's who are they? What are they doing?
My father met a count. Or a duke.
Oh my God.
A duke. He was a duke, and they were at dinner, and somebody said, "What do you do?" And he said, "Nothing at all." Anyway, and he got going, and it was so natural for him. I take a stipend from the English government. Anyway, but nothing.
Isn't that crazy?
I'm a duke. Of course, I don't do anything. I'm royalty.
And royalty, they get paid.
They get paid. Yeah, I believe they get.
So
I believe the state
preposterous.
You guys met, Mo. I
think they get paid.
The shooter on the show. He was when he worked on Ali, and for some reason or another, I don't remember how it came out, but he was like presented to one of the British royalty, and it was like a guy comes in and breaks down. Okay, when he comes in, like, don't do this, don't do that, put these gloves on.
Yeah.
Yeah, if somebody said that to me, I would be like, no, thank you. No, thank you.
He said you want, in his defense, he's like, every part of you wants to just say, like, no way.
Yeah.
Like, no way. Because, but you're part of this other thing. Like, you're there with people.
It's a ritual.
Yeah, and you're like people you're at people at work. Yeah. You kind of like, I could make like my statement, like I could express my liberty, and like the fact that I'm not deferential, at the expense of like all this other stuff that's going on. And he's like, in the end, you just.
But it's like
you just do it.
It's like covering your head in a synagogue. It's like covering your shoulders if you're a woman in an Italian church. There's a ritual and a protocol to everything.
Yeah, but the thing
it's
about
a tradition.
But with religion, though, there's like something much more. There's like much more deep seated. But this is just strictly like I'll honor you because you belong to some lineage. I'm not really quite sure how it came to be.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure on the rules and regulations how it gets passed along. But we're picking you to now be the one that we're deferential to.
But it's actually a little bit. It's a little bit different than that.
Covering your.
Right.
It's un-American horse shit.
I was about to say it's very British.
Everything that we don't stand for. We're like, get the fuck out of here with your crown.
But in Britain, they had what's called the Great Chain of Being. It was very, very central to sort of the British history and character. The notion that the god was there, the king was bottom. Then you had the aristocracy. Then you had the nobility. Then you had the merchant class. Then you had the serfs.
Where does Game of Thrones fit in there?
Well, you never stepped out of for many years. That's why Britain benefited from the notion that they had very strong institutions.
Yeah.
And so when you had a royal person that you came in contact with, it was very important to observe ritual protocol and ritual sort of greeting and interaction because it kept the wall between you and the royalty, because the entire society
To
was,
the benefit of the royalty.
well, no, but also the whole society was built on not only the idea of this caste system, but also very central to the British character was that to esteem out of your class was actually considered heretical. It was considered to the detriment of the entire community and society, right? Whereas Americans, we're like, all I'm thinking about is climbing the fuck out of this hole
But you
and
know
getting
what's
to the top.
what's interesting? A lot of people that believe that a society like ours, or at least how ours initially was born, is only built in response to suppression. It's like you have to have a situation like England where they're completely suppressing you to the point where you're willing to take such a great chance, but you already have a semblance of idea of order in society, which is based on their system of kings. And that's the weirdest thing, is it's almost like the only way for us to have ever gotten to a position of power or a position of, creating a culture, creating civilization, is that somebody had to take control. And that ultimately we are these weird fucking alpha apes. And we really want to be like led by like one person or like one group or one leader, or at least have someone at the very top that we can all agree to clap for. And until we fill that goal, then it becomes this wild fucking power struggle. It's like the only way we can work together is through one person. It almost seems like that.
What's interesting, though, is the Founding Fathers had a rebuttal to that. And George Washington, most famously, when they wanted to make him king, said, I am not only going to not be the king, because we don't have kings in this country, we have presidents that are part of a structure. A structure that is directly responsible to the people, right? But that was sort of the idea. And King George, when he found out that Washington had refused the kingship and instead went and fucking retired, was like, that guy's the greatest guy of all. That's the American character.
Right.
That was kind of sealed as, that was the great example George Washington did. He said, don't ever call me king, because that is exactly what we fought against.
Well, he's the exact opposite of this guy who's running Egypt now, who tried to turn himself into a king.
Mohammed Morsi.
What a
Morsi.
crazy asshole!
It's so bewildering, man. It's so funny the way people act when you turn the tide on, man.
It's nuts.
It's just amazing. He's like, oh, now I understand what Mubarak was fighting for.
Yeah,
He's fighting for this right here.
That's unfortunately a great deal. That's the biggest challenge for the Arab nations is learning the benefits of democracy, not
get through that king system that they
Yeah.
have.
Look at Maliki in Iraq. We basically created Saddam Light because Maliki now has his own police force that reports directly to him. It's still, that's why the Sunnis are letting off bombs. There's still, whether or not he can share power is a whole different story,
I get it with all, like, watching the Arab Spring stuff. I mean, I was always skeptical of it. In one way, it was almost kind of embarrassing, like, just understanding the history of some of those areas, the way Americans would so quickly, like, forget our allegiances. And so, we're going against Gaddafi, and, like, everybody's like, yeah, the number one U.S. enemy, Gaddafi. Like, forgetting that we were doing all kinds of things through there, and in some ways supporting Mubarak, in some ways, later.
Not in some ways. We supported Mubarak for 30 years.
And then
we gave Egypt
Gaddafi,
over $3 billion in aid every year. I mean,
$3 billion every
easily.
year.
Yes,
every year.
But then, so quickly people wanted to make the jump that, like, he was this logical enemy, and that was frustrating a little bit. But the main thing is, when I was watching all that, I wanted to be optimistic, but I just feel like there's no way that this is just going to be smooth transitions.
No.
And there's this competing idea, like, when you're an American, there's this competing idea we have between being pragmatic, like we want these countries to be such and such way in order to secure our interests, but also we have this thing where it's like the only legitimate form of government is a democracy. And as we're going to find again and again, I'm definitely not definitely not an expert on world politics, but I think we're going to find again and again that other countries being democracies isn't always going to serve our own national security interests. I think that we want to think that it's like that it's dovetailed, and it's not going to be that way, man.
Like maybe they're better off having kings. You just got to go.
Well, it depends on your perspective. If you're like thinking
king.
about the actual
But
people,
Rory
think about the
Parker-
actual people on the ground in those countries, it's like, yeah, I want to support democracy, but then someone like Like Morsi gets
democracy-
elected, and you're like, well, that's not what democracy
Right.
is. Democracy is voting for the guys I like.
It just depends on how you define it, because one of the things Rory Parker, I believe that's his name, is a British MP, part of the parliament, and he's walked every remote village in Afghanistan, every remote village in Africa, and he said he'd never been anywhere, even the most remote village in Afghanistan. He'd never met anybody, no matter how strong their tribal notion of the tribal systems were. He never met anybody who didn't want some say in who governed them. So
Yeah, I got what
so
you're saying.
that seems to be a human need and a human right and a human compulsion to have some say in who fucking. Otherwise, you get a guy like Ivan the Terrible who just amasses power. We all have a natural revulsion for that. We all have a natural kind of. I do think you're right that human beings need an alpha, a leader, and they always find a leader. But I also think at the same time they want some say in that process and in the ongoing process that is who governs them. And it really feels like we talk about with kids. If you try to take a spoon out of their hand without explaining that you need the spoon, they'll hold on to that fucking spoon. And human beings seem to have a natural resistance to those that would have power over them.
Yeah,
No, I
of
don't know
course.
exactly what you're saying.
Yeah, if you think you're going to be the president and everything's going to be smooth sailing, you know how many haters you must have the moment. I think that's probably half the gray. Half
Sure.
the gray is realizing how many fucking people hate you.
Sure.
Those guys age badly. And I mean, it can't just be the stress.
You make one choice, you're going to make 50% of the people happy and
Yeah.
50% of the other people
Yeah,
unhappy.
that's the funny thing. Is the way they got it carved down. That's not
Yeah.
even 51%. It's like they got
Yeah.
it carved down to 50.1%.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah,
Walking
they're
that
gonna-
fine
Hey,
line.
Jamie,
write
see-
books
see
about
on
you
fact check
and-
how much we give Egypt every year.
They're going to write books about you. They're going to make up lies about you. They're going to constantly, every person on the opposite side of the fence, whether it be Democrat on your side, Republican, whoever's on the other team, they're going after you.
And
But the
Yeah,
amazing
yeah.
thing is
Blamed
no one
for
ever,
everything.
no one ever does it, and then no one ever does it for 4 years. Has it? Maybe they have. Has anyone ever done it for 4 years and just
said,
said, you know
"Fuck
what, it
this."
wasn't for me?
no, no.
Did not enjoy it.
No.
It's like
Because-
something in you's like, as much as I hate this, I'm going to keep doing this.
Well, I also think that whoever got you into that position of power, you owe them.
Yeah.
So there's
Well,
there's obligations.
I always think about what George Bush said about Hurricane Katrina. They were like, you didn't go down New Orleans for 5 days or whatever. And then he said, well, here's the problem with me going down to New Orleans during that crisis. If I go down to New Orleans, I got to take 60 police cars and the resources of the city to protect me and to escort me to the damage sites. It costs $1 million an hour. Or
And you
whatever.
tie up a
He said,
helicopter to,
You
like,
tie
have
up
you do
helicopters. You
sightseeing
tie up
and,
all the rescue, all the stuff that should be given to the people on the ground at that time. And he said that was the catch-22. I was going to get criticized if I land Air Force One the day before, and that's one of the examples of being a president. You were always.
I
facing
think
these
the
weird
idea that you have to
ideas.
physically be in an area in order to observe or
it's
to respect
ridiculous.
the fact that a tragic incident has took place is absurd.
It's pageantry, man.
Yeah.
It's like you're playing like a psychological game.
Yep.
And I
Very
never heard
good
that, but
word.
I would almost hand it to someone if you could make that point. But people are so addicted to the pageantry of it.
Yeah.
They'd be like, oh yeah, in order for us to recover from this, I need to fly around in a helicopter and have a governor show me that it's flooded. Because other than that, I'm not going to believe it.
Yeah.
You know, and they'll be like, "Oh, you're right. It is flooded."
How come he
I will
didn't
now
come to
declare this
visit
a
us?
disaster.
How come he didn't come to visit us? Pageantry is a great word, by the way.
I love the joke that Jeff Ross got up and do stand up. We did this charity, and after Hurricane Katrina, and he goes, "I went down there. It's not that bad."
Oh no!
That's fucking terrible thing. But the way he said it was just like,
no.
it was so ridiculous. Like that was his joke. He goes, "I don't see what the big deal is."
Whoops. Yeah.
No, he was kidding though. He was kidding.
There's going to be a higher incidence of those fucking gigantic 100-year storms.
Look at New York.
Yeah,
It's
there-
going to be. There already is, man.
Yeah, it's going to be even higher. I mean,
Do you guys remember we were together and I was supposed to go to Texas and I flew home?
Yeah, yeah.
I flew home for that thing for
Yeah.
the
That was
I forgot the
Sandy.
name of it. No, yeah, Sandy. It
Did
was
you
the
guys
weirdest
get
thing
hit?
'cause I went home to be with my family and I was there, and if you were in my place, you would and you didn't have the news or anything, you would have just said, "Man, it was a little windy last night."
Yeah.
And like
I
a
heard
mile
that.
away, or not even a mile away, a half mile away, cars are like floating down the streets and stuff. But it was so
Crazy.
it was
Just
just,
a
so, like,
small
weirdly
area.
isolated. Like, well, no, just like because it was so much the storm surge.
Right.
Do you know what I mean, like if you got above certain elevation, you know,
You were fine.
It was just you would never have ever have known It was like there was a few more leaves on the sidewalk. But then just some short distance down, like you drop to a certain elevation point, absolute mayhem, man.
Yeah, because
But
that area
like
had been underwater, I believe, before anyway.
Really?
Yeah, so the sea level kind of went back to, that's what happened in parts of Jersey. The sea level just went back to what it was.
Yeah.
You know? So
it was the weirdest thing. Like, it wasn't just, it was just like, it wasn't like blowing and lightning and all. It was just like the ocean kind of went, I'll take that. You know what I mean?
They said parts of Jersey in those areas will never be the same. They may never come back.
No. Yeah, there was areas that just got so wiped over. There's to build something out there, like the odds that would stay there, and the odds the water's not going to hit that spot again.
I was watching some of that footage of the tidal waves in Japan, and how they roll through, and it looks like just water, and you'd think, well, it's just water. They take everything, like cars and boats. You're in your car. Oh, you know.
Yeah.
That was that footage from that haunted me for the longest time.
Horrifying.
People trying to get away from that. In their cars.
And that, in historical perspective, compared to some of the events that we know have happened, like giant tidal waves.
Krakatoa,
They know about that Canary Islands shelf. Apparently, there's like a shelf in Africa, this gigantic volcanic shelf. And when it breaks off, the fucking water comes at us, and it could go deep in on the East Coast, many miles.
Damn.
Many miles.
Yeah.
The way, because you're talking about like essentially a mountain falling into the ocean and causing this incredible blast of energy which carries this water, this huge tidal wave that starts in the middle of fucking, wherever that is, the Canary Islands, and goes 500 miles an hour across the ocean and then slams into America.
500 miles an hour.
Dude.
You could imagine, some of the catastrophes, but there were so few
I might have
people
made
that,
that
you
number
must
up.
have just lost you must
I might
have
have
at
made that
times
500
lost
miles.
civilization.
Well, whatever. Sounds good to me.
I think I made it up. But whatever it is, it's going to, yeah. I mean, look, they found many, especially near Spain, many sunken civilizations. They found the one that they're calling Atlantis, whether or not Atlantis was actually a physical place, but it's got concentric circles, just like they believe Atlantis did.
Oh, really? I thought Atlantis was like maybe inspired by, no, not Krakatoa, because that was in the recorded history.
What is
that was the 1800s. Loudest explosion ever heard on Earth.
You get Pompeii, right? The pyroclastic blast that just
killed Pliny
well,
the Elder.
I don't think it's really. There's a general consensus. I don't think they've reached that conclusion whether or not Atlantis was an actual
what
place.
exactly was Atlantis?
Yeah, whether or not
I was surprised to hear that. I didn't ever know this at Troy.
Yeah, it was real. Yeah, that's a fascinating
There's guys
story.
like what was Troy and what is Troy, and
Well, Troy was
There's
thought
that
to be a
German
myth.
the guy made a bunch of money in the California gold rush or something, went and kind of like started mapping out what Troy was. Like, this German guy, I can't remember his name.
So is it like under contention whether or not that's actually Troy?
Yeah, there's this guy that, and I don't know where it's at now. I remember in college we talked about this and read this thing about this guy. This guy, the German, had made a bunch of money in the California gold rush, then went. You'd be able to find it on your little computer there, and went and spent a bunch of time trying to locate Troy. And they don't think that it was over Helen, but it was like a trade war. And there's some mention of like some of the integral characters, like not Odysseus but some of the Agamemnon or some of the higher up kings. There's some like historical allusion to who these characters might have been that got involved in that war. But it wasn't like the face that launched 1,000 ships. I think it might have been a trade dispute. But I'm telling you some dated stuff, man, because I was in college in the mid-'90s, mid to late 90s, so that was what I knew then. But you'll find that guy's name.
So the idea was that this guy, he believed that it wasn't fiction. He believed that it was.
Yeah,
but up
he had
until then,
he had
it was kind of
devoted
assumed.
the latter part of his life to identifying what Troy would have been, and he had a somewhat accepted. When I learned about this, he had come to a somewhat accepted conclusion about what Troy was. Maybe some of the principal characters were involved were in fact, like some of the people that are discussed in the Odyssey or in the Iliad were in fact living people at that time, and they were engaged in there was a large battle and a siege of a city, and out of that was born that legend of the siege of Troy and the story of the Iliad.
You know what's really fascinating about like ancient Rome and ancient Greece and these incredible structures that they built? Is that they just all fell apart. Like nothing's going on there now.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess the people are living, they're having a good time living their life, but no one Greece is almost bankrupt, right? Aren't they
It is
completely
bankrupt.
fucked?
It
They're
is
bankrupt.
yeah.
They're fucked. And,
50%
Rome,
unemployment.
Italy is, they're just kind of hanging out in Europe. But if you stop and think about what the insane society that they had at one point in time, where no one anywhere else in the world had anything comparable.
People have
It is amazing.
fucking
people have
stonework
written,
and
people have written books and certainly articles about how Greece hasn't produced a whole lot of artistic expression that's world class artistic expression for 3,500 years or whatever, for a long time, mainly because you do some rare examples, but mainly because they have that legacy looming over them. If you go to Athens, the Acropolis is right there, looking over the city.
Oh yeah. It kind of humbles you a little bit.
It humbles you. The idea of why would I do anything when I come from when it's already been done? Sort of the idea is look at us now, and I don't know if
That's
it's
a good
true,
idea. I'm
but
gonna start
people
filling
have
my
written
bookshelves
about
at
that.
home with really shitty books. Like, I can beat that. I can beat that.
That's like, have you ever read any Faulkner? I was trying to write a screenplay and I read Faulkner and I was like, what the fuck do I have to say about anything? The great genius. I'm reading like his imagery and stuff, and I was like, first of all, I don't even know. It's the craziest. He was such a crazy, unbelievable writer, like on every level.
It either beats you, either beat you down, or it'll motivate you. Man.
Yeah, but I was like, but what do I have to add to the canon of literature? Zero. Hey, bro, you gonna write a fucking screenplay about but you got to keep doing it. You just
you can't think like that. You got to be inspired.
You cannot
but
think
can't
like that. You have to be inspired.
That can be very self-defeating.
Of
But
course.
people do think like that. They fuck themselves.
It's a trick. You got to just go. If you do the work, you have something to say, right? I mean, your experience. So.
Someone said to me, goes, well, listen, I'll never be well off. I go, what the fuck are you saying?
Terrible.
How can you even say that? How can those words even come out of your mouth?
Yeah.
I'll never be well off. That's it? You tap? You done? Just going to coast from here?
Because they've allowed other people to define them.
Yeah.
A lot of times that's how you define yourself. When you hold on to that definition, those lines become very strong because trying to step over them is too scary. You've been disappointed too many times and you've given up. But it's all a false belief system.
Yeah, and it's how much energy do you have? How much do you have enough energy to really pursue?
Yeah, but energy, I
correct
transfer
way.
energy to being something called inspiration. You have no energy unless somebody provides you with a blueprint or the inspiration to do so, right? One of the things they say is that if you can a lot of times you can motivate yourself by defining on what you're going to lose as opposed to what you're going to gain. We're really good at dealing with things like, I didn't get that, and then we just come. But they say that psychologists sometimes will tell you, if you don't do this thing that you want to do, what do you actually lose? What are you not going to get? What are you going to lose that you already have? And when you start framing somebody's, motivational, incentives that way, they will tend to work a lot harder.
I think about that all the time, man. I'm always motivated. I'm always motivated by
what you're going to lose as opposed to what
oh,
you're
absolutely,
going to get.
man. Because I always feel like I've carved out an existence that's way better than I would imagine I would have carved out. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So it's like I'm not motivated by what I didn't get. I'm always motivated, like in a way, by what I did get.
Mm-hmm. So you're
you know what I mean? Like I wanted
I can't
to do
lose
something.
this now.
Yeah, I want to do something. Like I want to be able to spend much time outside. I want to be able to hunt a lot. And then now it's not. I don't feel like I got jibbed. I'm like, man, I got to hang on to.
Well,
I got a sweet situation to hang on to. It's kind of like
it's interesting
but
you say
it's
that,
as
though.
scary as anything. It's as scary as striving towards something. But
well, I just realized, I went and bought some mats, and I've been rolling with my buddy in my garage, and I was like, why am I doing this? Like, what? He goes, what do you want to do? I go,
because you don't want to lose your fitness.
Well, I don't want to gain my black belt. I think I don't
Shut
want
up,
to
bitch.
lose.
You do.
No, but I don't want to lose.
Come
I don't
on.
want to feel like I lose my manhood, and I think that's what I'm kind of working to
through
hold on
age,
to.
through age.
Yeah, I think maybe I'm holding on to something. And I'm trying to when I do that
You're
when I
66
roll
now,
in my
right?
garage for an hour like I did the other day. I think I'm trying not to lose something as opposed to gaining something. Maybe I don't know. Maybe I'm kind of playing.
No,
with
man,
words.
this is a great. I'm glad I came just for that little bit of insight about
How to be a loser, how to have a loser's
No,
mentality.
to be
Hey, man,
motivated
hey,
by
man.
the prospect of loss rather motivated by the prospect of loss rather than motivated by what you might gain.
That's right. And
Fucking
that's-
man up and do the work and shut your bullshit mouth. You're talking nonsense. Just fucking do it. If you want to get better at wrestling or jiu-jitsu, do it because it's fun.
Right.
Stop with all this nonsense. You're
I
flooding
don't-
your own brain
I do
with
it because I like it.
horse shit.
No, I
Am
do
I
it
doing
like
this
it.
because I'm afraid to lose?
Yeah.
Are you going to write poetry now?
Yes.
You're going to bring me flowers, bitch?
Not until you now you squash my poetic spirit.
You just talking
Not
nonsense.
anymore.
I had to call you out on that nonsense.
Man.
Me, man. I'd feel
That shit's nonsense.
I was about to break into a song. Thanks a lot. Thanks a
You're
lot,
talking
Wayne Clipper.
nonsense.
You fucking
Why am I
Wayne Clipper.
rolling? Because it's fun, stupid. You're a monkey. Monkeys like to choke each other. It's awesome times.
Whatever.
Why am I doing it?
Fucking
Come
Wayne-
on, man. You
he's a
can
Wayne
waste.
Clipper.
You can waste your fucking energy. Why? Why pursue these things I enjoy? Just fucking pursue the things you enjoy.
Right.
That's why you got to get rid of that fucking Prius.
Hey, man.
No,
Hey,
I
man,
know you don't want to drive
it's
that
sensible.
car. I know. I'm trying to talk him into a Shelby
It's-
Mustang.
it's
I'm like,
Barcelona
"Do you
red."
I'm telling him that he doesn't understand at this stage of life that we're in. The cars that are available to you right now are like little rides.
Give me
you can take
three
a
cars.
ride.
Give me 3 cars to get and make them
For
kind
you,
of practical. Don't
shut
be
your
crazy.
fucking practical whore mouth. This is what you need. You need a Shelby Mustang, the new one.
It gets
Can
a
you imagine
block
something
out.
about you liking to be able to rev your
GT500.
engine when you're stuck in traffic or something like that?
Oh, you want to hear it. You want to be able to hear it. You want to be able to hear the rumble under this. It bring you back to your childhood. It will give you bursts of endorphins as you drive.
get that
It'll make
right
you
now.
feel.
But then you might have to
you
sit
never had
around-
one. That's why, because you never had one. You don't even
And you
trust
might
me.
sit around thinking like, do I love this car because I'm afraid of losing something?
Yeah.
See, that's what you think. That's an old one.
Oh, that's a nice car.
That's a '69.
That's actually a cool
Is that your
car.
car?
No. I have one of the modern ones. I have a.
Show me the modern one.
the Shelby GT500. There's a new one that's coming out now that has 662 horsepower.
What the fuck am I going to do with that thing?
Oh, you're gonna enjoy the fuck out of it. That's what you're gonna do.
Take
That's a
Kurt,
lot, man.
that's-
Because I think about horsepower in terms of boats.
That looks like
And
a
when
boat.
you have 606, that's a lot of horsepower.
Preposterous car for a human being to drive. Absolutely
So
preposterous.
I'm definitely not getting that, but give me something else to get.
You should get that just to fucking for once in your life. Just have something like that. Understand what the fuck is going on. I'm trying to tell you about something awesome, and you're like, "Oh, I don't want to be awesome." I know what you like, stupid. You just have never done this one
Am I
thing.
resisting? Am I
Is
resisting?
your motivation in your car have to do with
Stop getting into. Stop tapping into my 12-year-old psyche.
is
Me
your
and him
motivation in your
have
car
had-
just not, you just don't want to be as consumptive?
No, I just know what Joe's doing. Yeah, I'm just lazy, but Joe, I know what Joe's doing. Joe's just like tapping into my. He's like, "Come on,
trying to
dude.
excite his
Get-
inner monkey."
Get that dog. Get the one that's gonna bite somebody." It's like, no, go heavier, more. And I'm like this. I'm like, no, I'm a naturally moderate person. Stop it. He's like, he's always behind me, going, "Come on, pushy, push." He's my canary in the coal mine.
We've had fun for years.
The greatest.
We've had a good time, my friend.
But I do always end up coming around.
Well, you know what I wanted to tell you about? I heard yesterday. You know that show, Wait, Don't Tell Me?
Wait, don't tell me. No.
It's on NPR. I
Yeah,
don't
it's like a quiz show. But they had the thing about the news. I want to tell you this because apparently, I might have got this wrong, but I don't think I did. Last week they were talking about 2 weird 911 calls that came in, and a guy called 911 because his hamster had babies.
Oh
He dialed
my
911.
God.
And our guy,
That's awesome.
apparently, some guy last week called 911 because he saw a Bigfoot.
Oh my God! Well, who would
Yeah,
you
you
call
called
if you saw
911, reported Bigfoot sighting.
I think that would be the correct move if
I
you
think so,
really
too.
did. No, let's say. Now I know you don't believe in Bigfoot.
I've talked to him.
You've talked to Bigfoot.
No,
Steve
I liked your
Rinella,
theory.
How
I
dare
liked
you?
your theory about why Bigfoot can't exist, because he has no hair on his top of his feet and his hands, right?
That's someone else. Mine is just that he can't exist because he would there would be dead ones laying around now and then, like every other thing that's.
How
very
many
rare.
times have you ever seen like a dead mountain lion? Have you seen him? Like just a
I've had 'em.
carcass? No, I mean not ones you shot. I mean, have you ever run across one that you found that had just died of natural causes? Or
I'd like to lie to you and say that I have found lions that died of natural causes, but I have not found lions that died of natural causes. But I've seen them in the wild 3 times.
right, 3 times. Yeah, I mean, I don't have any chips in the Sasquatch camp.
Yeah.
But Jane Goodall says that she believes that it exists, and that's fascinating to me.
She thinks there's an ape species we haven't
Well, she
found.
thinks it's a gigantopithecus.
Well, what about those ones? What more do we know about those ones in the Congo that are like?
Totally different animal. What,
chimps, the
yeah,
howlers?
what Jane Goodall believes, I'm pretty sure, is that it's a gigantopithecus, which was a real animal. It existed in Asia. The most recent example of it was 100,000 years ago. So the idea is that we think it's extinct, but it might not have been because we know it coexisted with people.
Really?
It wasn't discovered, I think, until the 1920s. I think it was discovered somewhere in the 1900s. There was a guy who came into an apothecary shop where they would sell like fucking home remedies and shit, ground goat dick and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Chinese places are really into that, and they had this giant primate tooth. And this guy examined it. He said, well, what the fuck is this? Well, it turned out it was a totally different species that nobody ever heard of. And it's an 8-foot bipedal primate that buried its young, or buried its dead, rather. Wow. Yeah, they believe they stacked their dead.
Yeah.
So the idea that this thing existed alongside human beings, and it really did.
I love how they can like take a piece of bone and construct an entire.
But,
it's like
the hard part is they
killers.
often can't, though. I mean, you can tell a lot, but there's a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, like, and I don't criticize people. Like, a lot of people get off on looking at mistakes, you know, that scientists have made. Like, oh, they thought this, now they're telling us this. It's like they're trying to put together a cohesive narrative, and the scientific process is always inviting people to add on and make corrections. But some people are fixed on this idea that if you can't get everything exactly right the first time, you have no business even dabbling in it.
Right.
So I'm not like when people have made mistakes in talking about like lineages, I'm not down on them. I don't like glorifying the mistakes to point out that it's all futile and, you know, it's all BS. But
they make mistakes.
Mistakes are made. You know? And I think you got to continue chipping away at it and continue trying to add to it. But the Bigfoot thing, of all of our, you know, the species that we have, the endangered species that we have, and I'm talking about in North America, the ones that we knew we had and they went away. And some of the ones that we knew were hanging on, we still have a big problem with mortality on those things. And we find them. You have like very few Florida panthers. Every year they're getting hit on the highway.
Thank God. Kill those creepy fucks.
Hey. No,
dog-eating assholes.
No,
Dog-eating assholes.
I love panthers. How would you not like panthers?
One ate my dog.
Whatever.
You lost a dog to the lion here?
Yeah,
Yeah, but they're awesome.
Yeah, they're beautiful. But they're killers. They're fucking killers. They shouldn't be in
are we.
America.
So are humans.
I'm not tolerating that shit.
Only reason I'm
he
not
wants
saying
to
is
rid
I know
all
you don't
of-
believe that.
Anything that can kill me, you can go fuck yourself. If it might eat you one day, did you ever see that video of the woman in Russia where she's in a town in Russia and a polar bear has made its way into the town, is attacking her, and everyone's screaming and they're throwing shit at the bear?
Oh, really?
Have you ever seen that, Jamie?
No, dude. It's a video?
Pull that up. Yeah, woman attacked by polar bear in Russia. No. Yeah, it's terrifying. The bear is just picking her up.
It's legit.
No.
Yeah, 100%. And she got away. She got away because the guy threw, like, it looks like he threw a tire iron at the bear, and it clunked the bear, and the bear just freaked out and ran away.
Wow.
And she had her pants down, and she's, like, pulling her pants up and trying to get away. The bear, like, just
Who's the guy that films this
launched
stuff, man?
her.
Why wasn't he over there trying to help her out?
They were all yelling. They were in apartment buildings.
I
They
don't
were
get
terrified.
these people always filming everything instead of getting in there and
Well, that's when you
Because
need
they
a
don't want to get
high-powered
eaten.
rifle.
They don't want to get eaten.
Yeah.
You know, if they don't have guns.
It's if I see
I
a
know.
polar
What do you
bear,
do?
if I see a polar bear, I'm running away, guys. I love you all. But
If you
I'm
see
running
a
Look,
If
Brian
you
all of a
see a
sudden
polar
went
bear-
insane, and he starts gouging you with these, right? I would never be like, oh, you know, I'm gonna make a movie of this.
Yeah, but Brian's
You know,
not a
I'd be
polar
like
bear.
over there like,
it's really flattering
stop,
on his
stop.
behalf
You know?
to compare him
I
to
do
a
have
polar
broad
bear.
shoulders.
There's
in
a big
relation to my
difference between
waist.
Brian trying
Hold
to
on.
eat people.
This is it?
This is the woman. To see the middle of it. See that lady right there? It's like near that fence.
Yeah.
Watch this. This is really fucked up, man. She's ducking right now. Here comes the bear. Look at this shit. Look at this. That is a fucking polar bear, man. And so, see here, some guy throws something and hits him.
That's a young polar bear.
Yep, but it's big enough, dude. Then they're little babies that will fuck you up. That chick
Yeah.
got jacked, and look at her. She's getting up, and her pants are all fucked up. Yeah,
Girl, run.
I think she's really hurt. That's a scary ass animal,
Dude,
man.
that thing just took a couple nips out.
In a village, just came into a village. You know. Yeah, they don't fuck around. They eat everything that moves.
That's right.
Polar bears are way scarier, right? That's what they're worried about. That hybrid, the hybrid between the polar.
Yeah,
and the
those
grizzlies,
keep
right?
turning up. I know a guy shot one now.
Really? There's a lot of them now, huh?
I don't know. There's a lot more. I think they know about it.
Okay,
now.
Steve.
But they're not viable. They're not sexually viable.
Right. So this is a global warming thing? Is that what's going on?
I know that the theory I'm familiar with is people suggest that it might begin to happen more as the polar ice cap recedes and polar bears aren't able to spend as much time out on the sea ice, that they'll be coming inland more. So I think my understanding again is there's been an increase in the distance inland that people have been encountering some bears, and it's greater likelihood of bringing polar bears into what would be traditionally like interior grizzly habitat. And so some hybrids have turned up. But I don't know, they're not viable, and I don't know if anyone knows like in a bulletproof way that this wasn't happening before and it's happening now. But I think just in a logical sense, if there's not going to be the availability of sea ice, bears are going to spend obviously more time on ground, which is going to bring them into, when grizzly bears are out of hibernation in the spring, is going to bring them into more contact. So, I mean, that's what people say. But a guy, there was a guy not long ago, just a couple years ago, shot one, and it was legit. He knew it was weird when he shot it and took it in. He was a native guy. I think and shot it, and it was checked out, and that's what it was.
Here's what I want to know. When we go hunting in Alaska, are we going anywhere where there are hybrid bears? Because I will come with an arsenal, my friend.
I don't know that you can really make the case that hybrid bears. I don't know that there's a case we made that hybrid bears are more dangerous than non-hybrid bears.
Well, guess what? Since you can't make the case, I'm going to err
You
on the
don't
side
know
of the
they
car.
will.
Well, how about I make the case that all bears are fucking dangerous? What are you talking about, man? What you like? Oh, this pussy's only a grizzly.
Right,
it's not even a
right,
hybrid.
right,
you
right.
fucking look at you.
Whatever. Golden bears.
You weak, silly
Big
bitch.
deal, guys.
I'm gonna leave some honey, and you just go to that.
I'll use
If we
bear
go
spray.
up there, would probably, it depends. Like if we go to an area like a black, like just category, don't worry, like black bears. You don't worry about black bears. People just generally don't worry about black bears. But if you go to an area that has mixed populations where you have, in the interior areas, you might be hunting black bears, but there be grizzly bears around, you definitely got to pay more attention to them. I mean, it's just like,
yeah, but wait,
you got to pay more attention to them mainly. You owe it to the area and you owe it to the animals to pay attention to it, because if you just have negligence and it leads to a conflict,
define pay attention.
You got to look out for them all the time.
Be aware. Don't do stupid things in your camp. Don't invite disaster.
Which is food.
Just being clean, keeping like being cognizant of what threats are.
Well, here's the thing. It's dark.
Yeah.
We're cooking meat. Okay?
Yep.
Which we did last time. That seems to be inviting bears in.
Yeah, I think that the goal though is to kind of strike a balance. I mean, you could live like this really and I know some people, we call them being paranoid. Okay, I know some paranoid guys who everything they do is like their whole experience in the woods becomes tainted by their fear of bears.
Yeah, well, that would be that's me.
They
That's me too.
they'll go off in some other place hundreds of yards away and eat like food that they imagine would be unappealing to a bear, and do all this kind of crazy stuff, and they brush their teeth off in a different area and hang their toothbrush up in a tree because it might smell the thing, or they don't go out in the woods if they're if their wife's menstruating, they don't want to go out in the woods with her. And you can go crazy, or you can be like crazy in the other extreme and just kill an animal and drag it back to camp and gut it and then leave the guts laying there for 5 days to ripen in the sun next to your tent, which would be like the other kind of ridiculous. Or you can kind of walk a moderate line. And if you can do things without tainting your experience, but just little common sense issues, not camping right on top of carcasses. If you're cooking smelly food like fish and fish guts and stuff, be careful about getting rid of that stuff. Putting your food up in a tree. If there's trees available. If there aren't things, then you put your food somewhere where you can see it and monitor it. Lay sweaty clothes on top of it to enhance the human odor in the area. I mean, just little things you can do that don't ruin your time, but that you're generally trying to decrease the chance that you're going to have a conflict that's going to have to get the government involved. They're going to come out and have to kill some bear because you.
So grizzlies, when they smell humans, tend to avoid humans.
I think yeah, and even the ones that don't have experience with humans, like if you go in a really remote area where you run into a bear, you run into a 2-year-old bear, 3-year-old bear, and it's reasonable to assume he has not had a direct interaction with a human. It's possible he just hasn't. His parent, his mother could be 12 years old and she's had a handful throughout 12-year-old life, but the young one might not. But when they smell you, oftentimes it's new. It hits them on they just smell it. I think they got the world divided into smells good, don't smell good.
Yeah.
And I think that some smells like a human smell is kind of like I don't like that smell.
Yeah.
And there's and there's a behavior posture. We were talking about a hunt we did on the show where they had to run a bear out of camp, and just coming at that bear and trying to look big and pissed off and unyielding speaks to the bear. He's not going like, oh, there's a person and he's likely to be armed. He's just thinking, whatever that is, that thing is pissed off and coming at me.
Yeah.
For the folks who don't know what we're talking about, the Tim Ferriss episode of Meat Eater is when they went caribou hunting in Alaska. So if you were looking for the one to watch on TV, that's the one. If you're looking for this particular situation, but these were big bears. There was one you saw, and then an even bigger one that was running towards the camp.
And a lot of people are more afraid of the little ones.
Really?
Because the little ones they haven't accumulated that a set of
Wisdom,
experiences
yeah.
that teaches them like what's good and what's bad. You know, and think
Right.
about like adolescence. If you think about if you're going to get in like a road rage incident, in some ways, a road rage incident with a guy that's 50 isn't quite as dangerous as it might be with a guy that's 18. Like the guy that's 18, you don't know. You know what I mean? He still might be like sorting through some stuff, or he might be willing to like.
Yeah.
He's not aware of how long life really
know what
is.
I mean? Like,
Kids driving cars.
Yeah.
You know,
There's like a,
Yeah.
And I think that, and so some people that, and these are guys that know, there's some of you guys that know so much more about bears than I do, but people that know, like, look particularly, like the particularly dangerous bears, the bears to watch out for, are the ones that have been recently kicked out by their mother. And the males will get kicked out and tend to have to go farther afield to find a home range. Everywhere they're going, they're getting beaten up by a resident bear. They don't have a good lock on available food resources yet. It's very likely that they're hungry, they're inexperienced, they're pressured. And when you encounter those are ones that people watch out for. That's a theory about it. You know,
is that black bears as well?
But I think that those black bears are more likely to end up like in some tree in the middle of a town, the young displaced ones. But again, I just like generally, and you can cite examples of things that happen. Like generally, like, black bears are just not. I don't think of them as a dangerous bear. I don't think a black bear is being any more dangerous than I think a deer being dangerous.
Really?
I'm just not bothered by black bears.
There's a crazy video recently from somewhere in Canada where these dudes they're in tree stands and they're standing there, and the bear, for whatever reason, just runs up the tree and is beside him in the tree.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
In like a couple of seconds, and he's like, "Don't fucking." And they're talking to each other and they're filming this.
That bear probably smelled something.
Yeah.
Like my dad's buddy got, as much as I just said, I'm not afraid of bears. My dad's buddy got mauled because he was hunting bears from a tree, and a sow with cubs came in, and he didn't want to shoot the sow with cubs. Most places you can't. But that sow smelled something. She smelled a person, and her response was to shoo her cubs up a tree to safety.
Wow.
And she shoot him up his tree. So when they came past him on his tree, they started squealing, and then she came up and mauled his lower legs. I remember one night we were sitting in our house. My dad got a phone call.
Oh,
This guy he used to hunt with had gotten his lower legs mauled by this bear, and he eventually fended her off. Was trying to fend her off with the arrow, and the two cubs eventually came back down the tree, and then she let him be.
Oh my God.
So there are instances, but you can also, if you're just like cruising YouTube, there's plenty of places where you go find a deer knock the hell out of someone too.
Yeah. Look at this bear climbing this ladder.
Bear. He's climbing a ladder?
What are you doing there?
That's not a big bear though, because look at its ears.
Now, is it the best thing to do? Just talk to him? Look at that bear ran away. That's big enough.
Yeah,
That's big enough.
Just hooting. The acceptance. Well, see, here's the thing: is like some people say that, again, this it's like if you look at like when bears actually attack people, it's like oftentimes just like weird circumstances or unpredictable things. But the general thinking on it, the general wisdom on it, if a black bear does attack you, it's predatory. Okay. He's not defending territory. If a black bear attacks you, he's like, I'm going to eat that. So the thinking is you fight like hell.
Whoa.
Okay?
Jeez.
Fight like hell.
Christ.
If a sow grizzly with cubs, you spook it and it attacks you, what it's doing is it's neutralizing a threat. So then the thinking is
Play dead.
get cover, because right here's where they're going to kill you. You cover this and curl up and don't move. And she's like, take that, bastard, and walks off. And again, if a lion was to hit you, you're supposed to just go ballistic on it because it's a predatory response that it's having. So when black bears, when you do hear of black bears, when they attack,
that's good to know.
Often they attack kids, and lions often attack small women joggers. Like small women joggers seem to get attacked by lions, or young kids seem to get attacked by lions. Yeah, it's that thing's like, I'm going to eat that.
Jesus.
Boom.
Wow.
But then grizzlies eat people too, man. Like you hear about people, that they get at by bears.
Yeah, there was a guy recently. They think it was a hybrid.
No. I'm saying, well,
There was a guy who was a miner, and he went in to get groceries in town, and apparently his boat died. His engine died, so he pulled over, and that's where they found his body. His boat,
you're kidding me. He had been consumed?
He had been mostly consumed. Yeah,
He was
and they
eating
think
them, yeah.
they think that might have been a hybrid.
You know what's weird? I was reading this book by this bear hunting book by this writer Tony Russ, and he was talking about that like on Kodiak Island, like in the Alaska Peninsula areas that just have really dense grizzly populations. Or brown bear and grizzly is the same thing. Just people generally say like brown bear for coastal grizzlies,
right.
and grizzlies for interior. And he was saying that the grizzlies, like the male grizzlies, will come out. And when they come out in those areas that have, they might have like a grizzly for every 1 or 2 or 3 square miles, so a lot of them, a lot more dense than most other areas. They'll come out, and when they come out in the spring, they're hunting cubs.
Wow.
That's what's on the menu, man.
Wow.
It's like there's so many of them, and they're so vicious that they come out and like their food, a primary food source for some of these mature boars is grizzly cubs.
Oh my God!
And he'll go after. But he said a weird thing is, and they'll kill those cubs. We said in all of his hunting, when they'll kill a grizzly or a brown bear and skin it, he said in all of his hunting, he's talked to other guys too. He's never seen where a brown bear consumed the skinned out carcass of another brown bear.
So they eat cubs, but they never eat the bear itself.
And he mentions in this book, he talks to some other people he's talking about, some guy like in 20 years of hunting or whatever, yet they've never seen the carcass of an adult get cannibalized.
Wow,
But
that's
they'll hunt
fascinating.
down, and it's like a active prey for them.
Wow.
So when they're hunting the cubs, do you think that it's a response to like controlling the environment, not letting any new members in?
I think it's
So it's not
I think
a
it's
food
two things.
thing?
I think it really is food.
Yeah.
But it's also that they know that sow will go back into estrus because she's only gonna put off
so
cubs
brutal.
maybe every few years.
I heard dolphins do that as well. Dolphins murder babies if they know that the woman because she won't mate with the dolphin.
Yeah, and then there's that blue whale
to
too.
get
Will
laid.
drown. The blue whale will drown. They'll drown a female's calf because she'll breed again. If not, she's not going to breed for years.
Christ.
Yeah, it's rough, man.
Yeah.
There's a lot like people that really try to like dress up the animal world as
Yeah.
being like everybody's always innocent. It's like there's some wicked stuff out there. But those big boars, he was talking about, this dude Tony Russ was talking about, these big boars, they'll go out and dig dens.
Jesus Christ.
They
And
come
go
out
and pull
early, and the
babies out.
females will come out later. So the females will be in the dens of cubs, and those boars will go around doing site visits, and they'll dig cubs right out of the den and eat
Oh my
them.
God.
And I imagine they're probably a little bit indiscriminate. Like, there's a chance he's going to consume his own offspring.
Jesus
but he's also thinking
Christ.
that all these sows that wouldn't be available to me for 2 years, 3 years, are going to be available to me this June.
Whoa.
In June or July when they
So
go
do
into
the
breeding.
females defend?
They have to. They have to. And I feel like I've seen and also talked to and heard from people who talk about that they've seen instances where a female has,
Fought them off?
where the male wasn't that committed. Because it's going to come at a price to them. But then some of these males are so big that they can get up to be where they're nearly twice as big. And
a
they're
female.
battle hardened, man.
Yeah. Yeah,
It's
there's
wicked though.
that movie Grizzly Man,
Yeah,
when
yeah.
those two bears
good
go to
movie.
war and they start duking
That's
it
a
out.
fight like.
Unbelievable footage that guy got. Like,
I'll tell you
to be
what, that's
there.
some of the most impressive. People are always down on that guy, for all these reasons. But I'll tell you what, man, that dude's a hard camper.
Oh yeah.
You go do it because
It's a funny way of putting it.
no, he'll outcamp anybody. And people in Alaska always like people in Alaska get really offended when like an outsider will come up and do some like thing like go camping for a long time. So like he gets eaten by bears and everybody's like, oh, he's so stupid. But the guy knew he was going to get eaten by bears and he outcamped everybody. You go out to an area like that, it just rained, and he camped 7 summers in a row all summer long. People are like, oh yeah, but he had his girlfriend with him. That could make it worse, man. It's like to be uncomfortable with your girlfriend is like worse than being uncomfortable by yourself.
Yeah.
Because
You're
you're like
right.
being uncomfortable for 2 people, and there's a certain amount of responsibility that comes with that.
Yeah.
He was a hard
Especially
camper.
if you like her.
And yep, because you're just watching it crumble.
Yeah,
and he
you
was
don't-
a hard camper, and he collected some footage. That fight is unparalleled.
Unbelievable.
It's just amazing, man.
They believe
the
that he-
power in those 2 boars is
Yeah.
just like, my
Yeah, and they duked it out for quite a while. He got like really close-up footage for the folks who don't know what we're talking about. These two bears just fighting over territory.
It's worth watching that movie alone. It's worth watching Grizzly Man alone to watch those boars go at each other. They devastate that area.
Yeah, and that's not like a common thing to see, like in that close, that good of footage for that long. It's a long-ass fight.
I had a butt. I got like you can hang out in the woods so much, you know, and you can hang out in the woods so much, and then when you look at all the things you've seen out in the woods, it's like it's startling, like how few really weird things you see, but it's proportionate, you know. No one just spends a little dinky bit of time out in the woods and then sees tons of weird stuff. Right. It's like you got to put in the hours, you know, to catalog stuff. Like there's a guy I know. This guy, he's a guy, Jay Scott, and I was talking one day. Like I was feeling cocky because I've seen three mountain lions while I was hunting. You know, and there's this guy Jay Scott, just hunts. He's one of the best big game hunters I know. And I was saying like, you ever seen a lion? He said I'm looking for number 33 right now.
Oh,
and that's not hunting lions. That's sitting and watching.
Jesus Christ!
Sitting and watching for game. He had logged 32 that he spotted. Not running them with dogs, but just being there in the woods, watching, looking for lions with looking for game with his binoculars. And that right there, you can't buy it. You can't, like, and he's a very honest guy. That's like, that means like, oh, that dude spent tons of time out there. And some of the things that guy that was in the footage, and I'm only going by, and on Grizzly Man, I'm only going by whatever I saw on that 2-hour Herzog movie. Like, Lord knows how many things didn't make it.
Yeah.
Oh, is it? Yeah.
But
he was out there and witnessed some amazing sights, man.
Yeah, well, that's what people have to understand. The Timothy Treadwell's footage was all turned into this Werner Herzog documentary, but this is just a piece of what this guy got when he was living up there. And I think a lot of people believe, look at that, they're going to war with each other.
They're so powerful.
They're good Greco. They've got good Greco, good
really
underhooks,
good Greco, huh?
good control of the neck. That this guy had suicide by bear. That was the way he went out. That he knew that if he was there as late as he was, that the bears that would still be around would be really desperate. There were older bears.
Power.
Oh, and you can imagine one of those things getting a hold of you.
Look at that power, man.
Oh yeah, they're going to town and they're using real jiu-jitsu. Look at this.
I know.
He's passing the guard. Look, it's foot on the hips. That guy's got a good open guard.
And it's not. I don't know. It's not unreasonable to say that those are 800-pound plus animals.
Oh yeah, those are enormous
Think
animals.
about 800 pounds.
I mean, it's hard to put it in perspective, but that's good jiu-jitsu. I'll tell you that. He's in side control right now. He just passed the guard. He's in full side control right now, and he's got the neck. And he could deliver knees to the head if that was allowed in bear fighting, but it doesn't. See, look at that. See that move? That move. That bear reclaimed guard. God damn it!
Ow,
that is natural.
Dude,
that bear reclaimed guard. He reclaimed guard.
Oh, you can't let him get
Look at that. Back to guard again. This bear is fucking crafty. The bear on the bottom is doing a real good job defending himself. This for real, even though the other bear is bigger, what's going on there, the way the bear fights is how they teach you to fight in jiu-jitsu, for real. Foot on the hips, controlling his body, not letting him get all of his weight on top of you, shifting your hips so your feet touch onto his hips.
You see the chunks of hair flying?
Yeah.
And there's an interesting bit of like bipedalism in this too, man. Like they're pretty adept at being on their back. You know, they're pretty adept at being on their back.
The little guy ain't running. Look at him.
Well, when you see them standing up like that on their hind legs, that's when you realize how fucking enormous they are.
Yeah.
Look at the big chunk of hair missing from his back leg.
Do an arm drag.
Look at the size of the fucking light one. Look how big the light one is.
Yeah, but check him out. He's being backed down.
The younger one's got better jiu-jitsu. I told you. He fights off his back good.
He might be old. He might be old and crippled, man.
He wore out the big dude.
Wow.
That big dude got tired.
The big one had a hold of his face the whole time.
You know what?
Jiu-jitsu.
The biggest bear I've seen, like these are black bears, but on Prince Wells Island where my brothers and I got a little shack. The biggest bear I've seen out there, and that's famous for big bears. The biggest bear I've seen out there was a big injured old bear. I don't know what happened, but he was just packing a leg, and he was kind of in the autumn of his career, you know. So he had been like probably the man, and now he probably just gets his ass kicked.
Wow.
Yeah, he was down by a salmon stream that couldn't really move, and you can imagine now all the people he'd beat up because he could be old. You know, I killed a bear that was 17 one time.
17.
Yeah, and that's from tooth dentum analysis. 17, he could, you know, he could have a lot of grudges against him. Now he's kind of down.
One of the
that was a big board. Though,
one of the cool things about the trip that we went on, we should probably talk about that, huh?
Yeah.
We're talking about
It's so
everything
much
else.
fun.
Am I allowed to run
People
in
pissed
to
on
go
Twitter
pee first?
What the fuck?
Yeah.
Yeah, go pee, and when you come back, we'll talk to you about hunting and manly shit. Yeah, you're allowed to say pee on the show. This show is casual as fuck. You don't have to worry about saying
Say
pee.
pee.
What'd you do this weekend, pal?
What did I do this weekend? I don't know. I just watched the playoffs and I watched Nate's fight, and it was Safferdean fought a great fight, man.
It was a good fight. The whole card was good.
Ask me what
Our
I'm doing.
pal Josh Barnett got a big win.
Yeah. Josh Barnett is tough.
Yeah, he's an animal. It's good win for him because he was sick. He had like a real tough camp. Apparently there was he caught a real bad flu or some sort of a bug, some kind of a cold, and could not fucking shake it. He said he only had a few days of good, solid, hard training during the entire camp. He was sort of like just fucking half-assing it or trying to do his best, but trying not to get sicker.
It's interesting to see like where MMA is coming because like if you're not prepared for someone's weapons, and if someone hits you with something you haven't seen before, like I was thinking about Nate getting caught with those leg kicks over and over again.
Nate's seen
It's
leg
very
kicks a million
tough.
times. I think Tarek Saffiedine is he's a really classical technical striker, and Nate Marquardt, although he's a amazing striker, the knockout of Tyron Woodley,
he's so amazing.
that insane KO towards the end. But I think that technically, if you look at all the best technical fighters, unless they're freaks of athleticism, unless they're just much faster than anyone else, they follow a certain number of rules when it comes to defending yourself, when it comes to carrying your hands, when it comes to how you fight. And one of them is you got to respect everyone's techniques. So you got to respect leg kicks. You got to check leg kicks whenever possible. And I think the idea is that Nate was going to eat a few of them and just tag him with a big punch.
Right.
That's a strategy that works.
Yeah.
Talking about those bears?
No, Tim Sylvia knocked out Rico Rodriguez in the same way.
Right.
Rico hit him with a leg kick, and he was planted. He decided he's just going to eat the
step
kick
into it and punch.
blast the punch and catch a guy.
And
So a lot of guys do that,
Yeah.
and a guy like Marco who's got that kind of power
Sure.
probably banked on that.
Yeah.
And then somewhere along the line, Saffiedine hit him with too many of them, and he was like, "Oh fuck,
Right.
should have checked those."
Right.
So it's just
Nate
a matter
can
of
get anybody in the world at any given
absolutely
time,
could, and he might be able to beat 70 when they fight again. It's like it's when you're dealing with that level, that high level of fighting.
Yeah.
Tarek Saffiedine, it's a lot of times what it is it's also how they match up.
Styles.
Saffiedine's a really good wrestler because of his time with Team Quest. Like he's really hard to take
Wrestling
down.
is doing Greco with Olympians, like
Exactly. So you saw when Nate was really struggling to take him down. So Nate was forced to stand with him, and he's forced to stand with him. And Saffiedine is being more conservative, and he's being more technical, and so he kept landing those leg kicks. And Nate
Whereas
was looking
Woodley,
for the big bombs.
When Woodley fought Saffiedine, he just hit him with those low doubles and singles.
He
right?
wrestle fucked him.
Yeah, and the one thing they say that they say that Greco guys have a tough time with freestyle wrestlers. a lot
Oh
of
yeah,
times.
man. Well, a lot of people have a hard time
Yeah.
with a guy like Tyron Woodley.
Yeah.
He's just a fucking. He's a super strong dude with great wrestling technique.
right.
And he's in condition, and he's smart. And he trains hard, and he's a fucking super athlete.
And he can punch the shit out
His
of you.
wrestling's ridiculous. He gets a hold of you, you're going to go on your back. He's a big, strong guy. But Nate beat him, and that was probably the most sensational he looked. So to go from that fight where he looks unbelievably good to this fight, just a little wake-up call. Maybe
Sure.
just be a little bit more technical or conservative when you're fighting a guy like that, and to realize that kind of accumulation of eating those kind of shots really can pay off. Or can.
It's interesting because maybe Nate, I don't know, but maybe I wonder if Nate felt he was bigger and stronger, so he could out Greco him.
He probably did. He probably thought he would just blast him. Look,
Right.
after that Woodley fight, man. I mean, he knew it was going to be a tough fight. He knew. A lot of people said it was a gigantic upset. I don't think it was a gigantic upset. I think it was Tarek Saffiedine's finest performance, but it wasn't like a gigantic upset. It was an upset. I think it would. I would
But
say
you can see that Saffiedine's an excellent striker.
he's a great fighter. He's a very good
And
fighter.
a complete fighter.
Yeah, and that was like he realized his potential that night.
Yeah.
But back to what I wanted to tell you about our trip, man. And thanks for bringing my skull.
Well,
This was,
thank Ryan Callahan, man.
I love that dude.
He's a great
Ryan
guy.
Callahan was one of the guys that we went with.
A real man.
Yeah,
What
he saw it through.
He's such an awesome dude. The place where we went for dinner when we first came back, we haven't even showered yet, and we
Yeah.
stunk of 5
If you
days.
need a great
Good.
if you need a great hunting guide, call Ryan Callahan.
We were out in the camping by the side of the river for 5 days. We hadn't had any showers. And then before we even got to a hotel, we decided, let's go get some dinner somewhere or get some lunch. So we go to this place, and this fucking dickwad who owns the place has this shrine up to the fallen Marines, and he comes up to us and starts talking to us about Obama and are you
the Benghazi attack. And,
Oh, they killed my boys. He's just this overbearing blowhard.
He's a real a-hole.
And then he starts yelling at his staff, and he starts yelling at a woman who works there. And it's just like dressing her down for no reason. It's really embarrassing to all of us.
Dressing her down over order confusion that we created by having like a complicated order.
Yeah, and it wasn't anything that any of us had any problem with at all. It was just like, oh no worries, everybody was fine. But this guy's treating her like she just took a shit in the middle of your fucking chicken soup. It didn't make any sense.
Right.
So Ryan, at the end of the dinner, he gets up and he goes over to the guy and he starts calling the Better Business Bureau on the phone.
Yeah.
And he tells the woman, quit. You need to quit. You
Quit
need to
right
not
now,
work
yeah.
here. Just get out and quit right now. And he goes, you, sir, are an embarrassment. I'm a native Montanan, and I have some people in here. I'm showing them what Montana's like, and they have to see you exhibit this kind of behavior. And I was like, wow, that's some John Wayne type
Dude, he was
shit
John
right
Wayne,
there.
man. He was sitting there. He defended that girl.
He was embarrassed for his region, man.
He stood up for that girl.
Region,
The guy started trying to talk to him. He goes, I am not talking to you, sir, but I cannot
Yeah.
understand for the life of me why you would speak to somebody like that. I
Yeah.
just can't understand it. And
Yeah.
Ryan's so polite, but you can tell he's such a moral, upstanding guy. Like, he's just this great guy with a mustache, just standing there, like, just standing up for what's right. And he kind of like shamed all of us. We were like, God, I guess we should have done that. We're like, that
I'm
guy's
not good.
great.
I'm not good at that because I that guy made me mad. The way
I don't
he was
get. It's
doing
almost
it.
like it's almost like he's trying to sabotage his own restaurant. It was the weirdest thing to have. They'd be like, I'm going to go into your restaurant and buy the products you're selling.
Yeah.
And then you're going to come start like quizzing me into things that I know are traps.
Yeah.
Basically like that we were like Al Qaeda.
Well, he was asking us how we felt about Obama because it was right before the elections. He was like, "Yeah, you're not voting for Obama, right?"
Yeah, but then his political analysis was this: oh, you're going to be about Obama. You're not going. And he started dancing around like I guess Obama's gay or it's some stereotypical like.
It was the weirdest
like,
interaction.
You're a fucking weirdo.
I hate when anyone makes like when people come up just uninvited to like talk.
What's your
politics
political point of view?
or make a political insinuation? I remember when we had our kid, we had to get a pediatrician. I remember going to a guy who like started making cracks, like just assuming like kind of like that we're in the club, like we're in the left wing club.
Yeah.
Like he just knew that we were like in the left wing club, and like started making like cracks about like right wing people. I remember walking out, I'm like, there's no way I'm going to take my kid to a pediatrician who, when I walk in, I want to talk about my child's health, wants to get into it with me and like make assumptions about my politics.
Yeah.
It has nothing to do with the services I'm seeking. And when I wanted to eat that guy's hamburger, the last thing I wanted to hear was his like analysis of, I think it was like the Benghazi thing. I worked up about.
Yeah,
Well, you even said he tried to talk to you. You went, I don't want to talk about politics.
Can't win, man.
But
There's
Joe,
no winning.
I was messing with the guys. Like, you guys got drunk. I was like, nah, just a little blow. And he's like, hey, smart ass. And then Joe finally was like, hey, stop talking to that guy. You're encouraging him. Because I can tell when you clam up.
I didn't like that guy. It wasn't nice. When you see a guy who's not nice to his employees like that, I really don't want to talk to that dude.
But the
I just wanted to get out of
upside
there.
is the upside is that Bryan Callen is a solid guy.
Yeah,
man.
he's
Good
solid
man.
as fuck. That was a fun experience, man. To have our first hunting trip with you was a real treat, man. It was so much fucking fun. We keep talking about.
I love seeing it through new people's eyes.
Yeah, that's got to be weird for you, right? I mean, you spent your entire life essentially hunting. You can't even remember the first time you killed anything, right?
No, I don't. Well, I remember the first deer I killed, but as far as hunting small game and just be around it, what I never had is not that I relish seeing it in other people, but I never had that like the shock of death that people, you know what I mean?
Right.
That people experience, like kind of like the shock of like how serious it is.
So if someone
Like
grows
the
up
serious
on a
business of it.
farm, and they
I
see
think
that all the time.
Yeah, you just don't have it,
Yeah.
And I didn't grow up involved in agriculture, but I grew up involved in hunting, and I was around a lot of things, and I never had that like that level of surprise. And I think that when you take someone out for the first time, and my brothers have found the same thing, like with their wives or taking their girlfriends out or friends out, that there's a real reckoning that people have,
Mm-hmm.
and the funny thing is, despite someone's response, like usually people, if you kill an animal for the first time and you're going to eat it, regardless of what you're going to do with it, you kill an animal for the first time. It's not. I don't want to say it's humbling, but it like stops other thoughts. Mm-hmm. You know, you're alone with that thought for a minute. But the interesting thing is, as much as I've seen that happen, I've never had anyone later come to regret having done it. You know, it's always in some way strengthening for people to go see that, like that life,
it gives you
that
more
life
respect.
and death thing. No one's ever called me back and said that was just a terrible mistake.
For you, intellectually, knowing that this is a unique experience for most people, how does that make you feel? Like when you see it through their eyes, and the idea to you being so alien.
It's exciting for me, and I think that. I'm looking at. I think that I already kind of, in a way, I know what the experience is going to be for the person, because I think in some ways we're talking about really base aspects of human nature, you know, and so I kind of can anticipate, like if I take someone out on their first hunt and just kind of want to show them hunting first, what I usually do, you know, because like I respect you guys, want you to have a good time and respect your opinions on things, so I'm like want to like take you on an experience that's going to be a good one, you know, that's going to be like an immersive kind of experience. So I know that there's a certain thing that goes with that, like just to kind of get away from stuff and be out in an area where you've diminished some of the noise and you're allowed to be in the moment. It's just going to put you in a certain spot. And I think that it's like to take someone out on a first hunt, I'm not worried about like a wild card scenario, because I've done it enough to where I've seen that it just doesn't happen. It's like people go on a kind of predictable journey on a hunt.
You're talking about wild card as in
they would have some crazy response to it.
Oh, okay.
You know, that it would be like really unhinging for them, or that it would put them into, that they would be so depressed, or that they would be so guilt ridden. I've just never had it. You know, it's not like when I go into it, I don't think like, wow, who knows what's going to happen when this happens. I'm generally like, you know what's going to happen is the person's going to have a very fulfilling experience. You know, and they're going to appreciate the challenge. They might not ever go hunting again, but they'll always remember back on that and have come away and found out something about themselves. And it's like it's never been otherwise. If I would probably stop if I found that there was a high degree. You know, there's a thing that happened to me though with my own wife is she didn't grow up around hunting, you know, and she eats a lot of wild game and has eaten a lot of wild game ever since. She eats more wild game than 90% of the hunters I know. But she just had in her head, she's like, I don't want to see an animal. I don't need to see an animal get killed. She's like, I'm fine with the hypocrisy, if you want to call it hypocrisy. I'll eat wild game. I'll eat meat. I prefer to eat wild game over domestic meat. I just don't want to see a deer get killed. And one day I invited her. We were up at my cabin, and I invited her out on a deer hunt with us. And my brother wanted to get a deer. And we took our boat out and landed our skiff at this river mouth, and she was reluctant to go along because she was afraid of what she might see. And I had encouraged her to come because I'm like, what's going to happen is you won't even know the deer's there. We're going to spot a deer that's far away, probably obscured by brush. You'd have to look for it really hard to see it anyways. We're going to shoot it. By the time we get over there, it'll be dead, and it's not really the experience you're imagining. But we beached our skiff and started going up this gravel bar, this stream bank, and here comes 3 deer. Something scared them, a bear, I don't know what. Something scared them because they're running toward us. And they get so close that I'm not kidding you. I'm looking at the eyelashes on this deer.
Oh, my God.
They're just there. and I see that one of them's got spikes. One of them's a buck. And it was a buck-only season. And I see my brother, we're kind of hunkered down by a rock, and I see him, like, raising his rifle up. And I'm like, you son of a bitch. I was like, do not shoot this deer right now. We'll just get another one later. And he, you know, piles that deer up. And when my wife looked at me,
he shot it.
Yeah.
You say piles that deer up. Like,
shot it at point blank.
How far away are we talking? 10 feet?
Needed that monitor.
Oh, my God.
Just close. You know what I mean?
Oh, my God.
And it turned, and she thought that he had missed, but it, fell over. It was far. I'm exaggerating. It was far enough. It was very close. Maybe twice that distance. So
even twice that distance.
But I mean, like I said, I remember seeing its eyelashes.
We're talking about like 30 feet.
Yeah.
And very, very, very close.
Yeah.
And when she looked at me after seeing that, she was looking at me across a vast, vast gulf of distance. It was like she looked at me like she had never
seen you or something.
known me.
Yeah.
And I honestly, were just married. We were married not even a year, and it was the look she gave me. I was like, this could be the end of our relationship.
Did she find it sexy?
No.
Come on,
Looked
man.
at me like we were the barbarians.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, you just
And
assassinated
it was
Bambi
so
right in front of her.
But you know what? It was weird. And we're sitting. We drugged the thing down. And she didn't think we drug it with enough ceremony. She's like, its head was banging on. You know, we gutted it out, drug it back, threw it in the skiff, and started motoring back toward our shack. And no one was saying a word in the boat at all. But then within 45 minutes, it was enough time for her to process what she saw. And her take home was, you know what? I guess I'd still rather eat that thing than, an animal from a feedlot.
Sure.
Of course.
It was just like, it just took her a minute because
Right.
she was like, and later I felt like, she's like, I feel like I should feel something different than I do. I feel like I should feel outrage.
Intellectually.
Yeah, but then once she sat in that boat and thought about it, it was just like, it just passed.
Yeah.
It passed. She's like, you know what? I don't know. Things die.
It's so
And we
fascinating
eat.
that you have this, different point of view on death than, so many people. And for your wife to experience it like in its most shocking form on the first pass.
Yeah.
I'm sure it would take a little while to
Yeah.
intellectualize something
I
like
took
that.
away something interesting by butchering the deer and getting my hands in that deer. And I kind of thought to myself, I can certainly see how a hunter would have an easier time taking a human's life with a knife or
I
whatever.
wonder about that all the time.
I
man.
think because
Yeah.
you have an intimate experience with that animal, you're not as squeamish. Maybe you.
Yeah.
It is a strange feeling when you reach in there and you feel the guts for the first time.
Yeah.
The whole experience was really fascinating.
The heart.
But I passed out when my wife had an epidural when she was having our first baby.
Really?
Because I used to tell people, I'd be like, and I want to write it off as a needle thing. I
you have
tell
a
people,
needle
I
thing?
could cut your arm off, but I can't watch you get a shot.
Wow, that's so weird.
I don't know if it's a needle thing, but I don't know that it translates. I think people do. There's like an argument against hunting is that it turns you into like you're so comfortable with death and you're like an animal.
That should be the same
I don't know that it
argument
necessarily
farming, then.
I don't think it translates to being like comfortable.
No, I don't think
human on
morally
human
or
violence.
ethically you
No,
want
I
to.
mean
might be
that's the
better-
same argument then that someone who runs a chicken farm could
Yeah,
be.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
they kill chickens all day.
I just think that violence transforms you fundamentally. For example, like when you've done combat sports and you've gotten punched and knocked out, or kicked in the head and knocked out, or just put into a choke, and you are different. You are different about your own mortality, your own relationships to other men. Do you know what I mean? Like when
I
you've
can
been
picture
when
it.
you've
Having
been
not been hit
when
many
you've
times,
been
I can still
taken
picture what you're talking
when you've
about.
been taken
Yeah.
to a mat, or you've had somebody do like whatever they want to you, and you realize, oh, I'm very vulnerable. You get knocked out and it really hurts, or hit in the body, and that I think fundamentally changes you in your relationship, not just to other men.
How do you think this relates to hunting, though? What do you?
In the same way, like when you have an intimate experience of harvesting your own meat, which actually requires a really loud noise, the killing of an animal, and you see that blood, and you feel that what just was alive, and you're touching it, then you butcher it. I feel like I approach. I don't know, man. I don't even know how to articulate how it changed me, but I do think that something that is that intimately violent.
Yeah.
Is going to.
Why do you keep saying violence? Because I don't see it as violence at all. I think it's pretty abrupt in its ending. I mean, there's
I've started
there's a
using the
violent
term. I've
action.
started using it.
Violence.
I used to not use it. I've started like coming to terms because I
don't think
used to
it's-
want to like sanctify it. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And I'd be careful about. There's a thing in the hunting world where people are very reluctant to use the word kill. There's euphemisms for kill.
Really? Harvest.
The kind of like harvest or take.
But I feel like the obvious the gunshot is violent, but the butchering and all that stuff didn't
oh
seem
no,
violent.
that's
to me. And that's what you're-
post violence.
Yeah,
that's what
violence
I'm
is
saying.
the wrong
You're-
way to use but I just mean the blood. I like
Very
getting in there
graphic
and
and
feeling
real.
the
Yeah.
temperature of the blood, smelling it,
Right.
having it up to my arms.
I'm not trying to imply that shooting animals isn't violent. I meant,
No,
mostly-
the butchering on everything of that way.
But the whole experience, I didn't think of as a violent experience.
No, but
it was
let-
very surreal. Very, that's like a commonly used term, like the connection to nature. It's one of those terms I think that's used so much that the meaning of it gets a little fuzzy,
diluted.
and gets
Yeah.
a little bullshitty.
Yeah.
You know, oh, my connection to nature,
Right,
Satnam. You know, but that is what it is.
Yeah.
When you're out there living in that animal's world, sleeping on the ground, just basically like they do, and then following them around, then you shoot one, then you're pulling its heart and liver out. That's a fucking connection to nature.
Yeah, it's serious business.
I also got
yeah.
a different respect for what a knife can do, which is weird. Like you go, wow, man,
They really do
Boy,
work.
Yeah,
Yeah,
gee whiz,
yeah.
you're like,
We talked about this.
You know, that's the thing that I found, like being out with you on that trip, and then that I thought of from having hunted with Tim Ferriss once is people that have been like fighters. Like I'm not a fighter. Like I've been hit a couple times, but I've never beat anybody up or anything. Well, I beat up one guy in 9th grade, but you know, but I think that you bring a level of calmness just to the act of shooting, like being able to like get down and shoot. Some people are so unable to control adrenaline and fear that they can't shoot.
Yeah, I could totally see
I
that.
I got a buddy who guides, and he was saying that one time he took this guy up and they were hunting tar in New Zealand, and the guy shot, and my buddy's watching through his binoculars where the bullet hit, and he showed me someone was rolling a video when he did it, and you hear my buddy say, "You're 20 feet high."
20 feet high.
20 feet high. That's hilarious.
I think a lot of it
It was
just
just
the
like
amount of time I've
left
rehearsed
his
shooting.
mind. He left his mind.
When I
you
was
know?
I would have been able to shoot that deer with the first time we saw him, but I didn't have enough practice with that scope, and I was too close to the scope. And you know how you get that weird thing?
Yeah,
I couldn't find him in there.
Yes.
It was almost like two black half
Yep.
moons
Yep.
crisscrossing over
Yep.
each other. I couldn't get the image.
that
to be
more
clear.
than anything else is cause of beginner hunters not getting shots at things is the weird eye relief issues. It becomes very second nature, but
Yeah.
it's pretty precise, like where you put it.
Right.
And when you're in a weird position and things are happening fast, it's tough, man.
Yeah, for folks who don't know what we're saying, there's a scope on the top of the rifle, and if you're too close to that scope, it distorts your view. It fucks up. You have to be just in the right spot. And the first time we saw the deer, I couldn't get it in the right spot. And then he went behind this little area and then came back out again. And when he came back out again, I was able to figure it out. I pulled back a little bit.
Yep.
I was like, oh, there it is. But I was freaking out. I was like, I can't fucking see this thing. And if I lose this fucking deer because of this, I'll go crazy.
Yeah.
We have been stalking them for days.
That's
and
the
we've
thing,
been
that's the thing
climbing
that
up
comes
these
into is
mountains.
just excuse me, just wanting
Yeah.
to get it done.
Yeah.
I was desperate to
Yeah.
get deer.
It's like the
Yeah.
motivation that comes out, man. There's a lot of
Yeah.
things that come out in hunting that I think are applicable to life and work and stuff. But you get when you've been out there a couple of days and you start getting accustomed to that. I think it's easy to go for a day and walk away and be like, oh, it didn't happen.
Right.
You get
right.
a couple of days into something. Most people what I would almost call like a work ethic, or something comes up where you're like, we've committed ourselves to this, we've put time into it, we're out here, and you just want to make it happen, and it brings out a level of drive.
That's what happened to me.
Yeah,
back
And
and
it
it
feels
brings
so
out-
good to fulfill the goal, man.
Right.
That moment becomes such a gigantic sweeping moment, and that's why it's hard to stay calm, but it actually happens when you're building up with 2 days of fucking shitty camping and one with it's raining and pouring outside and it's cold every morning, and
Freezing
we're going to
my
bed at
ass off.
8 because there's nothing to do. It gets dark, we all just go to bed, and then we get up at we were getting up at 6 in the morning,
Yeah, it was long days,
whatever
long
we
nights.
get, and then just wandered around trying to find a deer.
Yep.
And but the one of the craziest visions was when we were on the top of one of those hills, and you're looking around at the vastness of that area, and man, was that fucking humbling. We were standing. I don't know if you remember this. We were on the top of one of the hills. It was one of the first times you spotted a sheep. You were glassing the area, and you spotted a big sheep way the fuck away from us. And when we were on top, we were looking around. You just you're up looking over at the vastness of this thing. You could just start walking and
Yep.
starve to death, and no one
Starve
would
to
ever
death.
find you.
I thought
no one
two
would
things.
ever find you out there.
I thought about how cold it was all the time and starving to death and how you have no light. you can keep that Stone Age shit. You can
It was
keep that
fun.
indigenous culture stuff.
I enjoyed it for 5 days. I'll tell you that.
It is a humbling area, though,
Yeah.
man. And it's one of those cool areas that really, and again, we talk about the Missouri Breaks region. It's one of those cool areas that really just kind of on its own resisted development.
Yeah.
You know, there's some spots that were so stunning that early on people are like, this is like Yosemite, Yellowstone. It was like the momentum was always going toward hanging on to it. You know, people wondered like, this is special. I mean, we got hot guys just shooting up out of the ground. We should early on like make sure to not screw this place up. And there's some great areas in the U.S. like, you know, I would argue Hell's Canyon, the Missouri Breaks region, that just remained pure just through toughness and tenacity. Like everybody went in there and tried to do something.
Yeah.
And it's like one of those places where you go and it's like, they tried to do that, didn't work out. Like one of the things that place is known for is that horse thieves used to just go there because they knew they could go hide out. You know, it was like useful to them just as a place to hide out. And there were some campaigns where it was like, we're going to go into the breaks, we're going to find them all, we're going to hang them from cottonwoods, and they'd go down in there and root out the guys. And it was like a spot that held wildlife for a long time. You know, it was a spot where some of the plains tribes could go down and hide out in there. And the break on the Muscle Shell that goes into that area was one of the last places that had free roaming herds of buffalo in Montana. You know, it's just like a spot where people would try to get a grip and it just didn't hold. And now it still isn't really, there's some protections there, but it's not like categorically protected like a place like Yellowstone is. But it just, after a while, people almost kind of threw their hands up in the air. And the interesting thing we were talking about is
For
because
folks who don't know what you're saying, it's like the people trying to settle in that area couldn't live. They couldn't run farms.
Couldn't grow stuff.
They couldn't grow
It's
stuff.
all
people would go
clay.
in and try to, people would go in and try to do homesteads. They'd try to run sheep.
How would that
in there.
work? The government says that if you stay on this land for X amount of time, it becomes yours. Is that how it
Yeah,
works?
you do improvements on it.
You do improvements. So there was all these homestead sites where we were walking around and we'd find these really old logs that used to be
Yeah.
the side of a
You'd see, like,
house. where
houses.
somebody
Yeah,
lived.
they'd be sheep shacks or sod
Yeah.
houses, root cellars.
It's fucking weird.
People went in there and tried to till.
What's a root cellar?
Oh, it'd be like a climate controlled area where you dig down into the ground, and
Oh,
you'd
and
have
you
like
put-
a cool place to put
okay.
to store
Food.
things, or and it'd also be freeze proof.
God.
Because you're down, you go down the dirt ways,
All
and then there's still a lot of old structures there to have sod. You can see that it had a sod roof.
How far do you have to go in the ground before it becomes freeze proof?
Well, however far down the frost line is, when you put in people have a frost-free
yeah.
riser in their yard. What do you got? Most places, like in Michigan, I remember we'd only go to our frost-free riser only went down 36 inches.
How fucked up is it that
didn't
if you
know
go
that.
deep in the ground, it stops being cold?
Well, you go deep enough, it'll burn your ass.
Yeah, but is that why it is?
I
You're
guess,
getting
right?
past the surface and it's getting closer to the lava?
Yeah, so like in Alaska, what they do is they dig down into the permafrost and use that for refrigeration all year.
Oh, wow, that's interesting. So
Yeah.
wow.
But
That's
guys
interesting.
you read about guys on the prairie that they would in the winter hunt and dig down into the ground where the ground was frozen. They would in the winter hunt and fill that with animals, fill it with quarters of meat, and let that freeze in the winter, and then pile canvas down or blankets down on top of that, put dirt back on so it'd freeze, and they'd dig that up months into the summer, and that meat would still be good down there.
What?
It would just take
So,
forever
so
for
they
it to
would
thaw
wrap the
out,
meat
you
in
know?
canvas?
That's
They would
incredible.
let it get frozen. They'd dig a big, deep pit, 8 feet deep or whatever, and put meat in there and let it get frozen.
Wow.
And then pile dirt on, let all that freeze up, and then it'd get warm out, and you could dig down there later and get the meat out.
Who's the fucking genius who figured that out? That's brilliant.
What about worms and stuff? I guess not.
Dude, I've been watching. That's
if
deep
you do it in the
enough.
winter, it's not getting fly larvae. I mean, if you let flies land on it and it was hot out and you buried it, you'd have a mess on your hands. But, anybody knows if you dig a hole and put your hand on there, it's cool down there.
Yeah.
Wow. I'm fascinated by these Alaska shows, all these different subsistence shows. Have
Yep.
you seen any of those?
Crafty Way to
Yukon
Do It.
Men and all these different shows where these people just live up there and they've been living up there for generations. Just,
I've never seen that.
trying to get by,
Yep.
killing rabbits and eating them. And
Yeah, good lot of craftiness, man.
You got to be
Yeah.
a carnivore straight up with that.
oh, 100%. I mean,
Yeah.
they grow some vegetables in the 4 months that they have to
Yeah.
do so. They have like a greenhouse and shit, but most of their food they're getting from, shooting animals.
Where did the Native Americans? I know it varies in the country, but where did they get their vitamin C and their micronutrients?
Fresh meat, man.
GNC. They had GNC's back then.
You don't get scurvy eating fresh meat. There's this
Really?
amazing story. Yeah, there's this amazing story
Is that
about
true?
there's
It gets
this guy.
the blood in it.
Yeah, dried meat loses it. So even when you put fruit in it, if you're making fruit jerky, you put bananas in a dehydrator or something, fruit loses vitamin C through dehydration. Mm-hmm. There's some loss of it. There's this amazing story about the French. When the French started coming over here to engage in the fur trade and do all their exploring, and they were centered around like a focal point of the St. Lawrence Seaway, Champlain, the guy that's now the father of New France, he had this idea where he was going to take orphans from Paris and bring them over and give them to the Indians, thinking that the kids already knew French. He'd give them to the Indians go take them off for a couple years, come back, and they'd be bilingual, and he'd be able to use these as emissaries, like ambassadors in trade. And one of the first ones that we know about that he tried this with was this kid who's later, we now, people call him Etienne Brûlé, gave him to the Indians. And in the first winter when Champlain and his people came over, they died like mad of scurvy all winter. But this kid was supposed to go hang out with the Indians. And so they would go out and fish through the ice and hunt, and they were eating a meat diet. But like they had, I don't know, 24 fatalities that year. The vast majority of the people all died. The kid never died. Mm-hmm. And everybody else was holed up in their cabins eating like hardtack and salt pork and stuff. And this kid that was out roaming around eating fresh killed meat survived. And then later went on to do made all these discoveries. He was the first person to see Lake Superior, first person all over the Great Lakes, went down all the way down the Susquehanna River. Might have been the first white guy to ever lay eyes. Was it Susquehanna? Was it?
Yeah, no, it is. It's just Joey Diaz. There was apparently something in the Laurel and Hardy called the Susquehanna Hat Company. And the Susquehanna Hat Company, like, they had shitty hats, and they'd put the hats on, the top would pop off. Like, this is really old stuff. And Joey Diaz once went on this crazy rant for like 10 minutes about how our weed was Susquehanna weed. This fucking Susquehanna weed. And I didn't know what he meant. I thought he was talking about Hannah Montana. So I was totally confused. I was like, what the fuck are you saying?
Still funny, by the way.
This fucking Susquehanna weed you're feeding me over here.
But anyways, they eventually ate this kid.
They ate him?
The Iroquois did, yeah.
That was common. That was another fascinating thing.
They ate him on Georgian Bay, man.
You told me that a lot of the tribes of the Great Lakes, like cannibalism, was fairly common out there, huh?
Yeah, man, they'd quarter people out.
Wait a minute. So
what tribes were doing this?
Well, the Iroquois ate Brûlé.
Wow.
You know, that said that. See, he wound up going totally feral. He went totally native, and the French even disowned him. You know, because they complained he'd come back for the trading season with the Indians, and they complained that his morality had conformed to the tribes. Like, you're going to turn a 13-year-old over to an indigenous culture and go away for a couple years, and he's going to come back still acting like a French Catholic. You know what I mean? It's kind of ludicrous.
Yeah, it's Tarzan. It's the story of Tarzan.
Yeah, they were like really upset that he came back, and he was very promiscuous, and in his hair, he'd changed his hair and wore native dress.
Sounds modern.
Yeah, so he integrated. And eventually he got into a legend has it. I don't know how much they really know about what happened. Legend has it he got in a dispute over a woman up on Georgian Bay.
It's always a chick,
on Lake Huron, and they cooked him and ate him.
Jesus Christ!
And they would boil him. So what these guys would do in this area, like a lot of these tribes in the Great Lakes area, sometimes they would just carry captives in the boat live, and then butcher them when you wanted to eat them, or they would raid an area and butcher everyone and just stack the quarters in the boat. So there's accounts of people talking about human legs stacked up in boats just as traveling food.
Brutal.
Oh, my.
And then all that stuff you're talking about, like making people eat parts of themselves and, you know, like cutting off their fingers and making them eat your finger, or, you know, like having a big sport out of it. Just like stuff that's incomprehensible now, man. But people argue, you know, anthropologists argue that all that violence had some societal function, and, you know, I don't know.
The societal function of cannibalism.
Just brutality, man.
Stacking legs in a boat for travel food. Holy shit!
Yeah, we were in New Zealand filming in New Zealand. We went and looked at this island and this big lake, and what they say is that the indigenous people in New Zealand in the South Island, who hadn't even been there that long, but they had been there. They had some people had come from the North Island and conquered the people in the South Island and would keep stocks of them out on this island, and staked out, and when they wanted one, they'd paddle out and get them and eat them.
Jesus Christ.
It's
Not
like
a
The
lot
Road,
going
man.
on.
It's like Cormac McCarthy's The
Yeah.
Road, you know?
But it's kind of fascinating that I got to The Road. I watched the movie until he was showing the kid how to shoot himself in the mouth, and I went, nope, no,
Yeah.
thank you.
So
I don't
happens
need
when you
this
have
fucking
kids.
visual in my brain.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's tough.
But the idea that this was happening on like a really regular basis is really not. A lot of people don't know that. Like that's
No.
not in the
No,
folklore
never
of
hear
the
that.
Native American. It's never discussed. It's always they were in one with nature and how, and they were peaceful to the white man before
Yeah.
the white man
No,
turned on
they
them.
were
It's
they were
hard-
human. That's what they were.
I know it's so hard to come to grips to what happened to the indigenous peoples here. It's so hard to come to grips to it that that people wind up going in wild directions. It's like that it was just brutal savagery, you know, and it was this awful existence, or that it was just this like peaceful, harmonious existence. It's like
was
really
complicated.
It's really hard to
Yeah.
just be like, you know what? There were complex and varied cultures that lived here.
Yeah. Yeah.
That had
That were human.
you know
All too human, but warts and all, right? I mean,
Well, the Sioux, you know, the idea, the word Sioux means Indian, and Indian means enemy. They call themselves the Lakota people. The word Sioux apparently was what the other Indians called them.
wow.
Yeah, there's a similar thing with Eskimo as a derogatory
Yeah.
term. The Athabascan people would refer to the coastal people as, you know, eaters of raw fish or whatever, and it became like a derogatory term that stuck.
It's really crazy when you stop and think about the idea that up until whatever it was, 14,000 years ago, the first people. When did the Vikings get here? Well,
Oh,
they
no,
were
that
the.
was-
You mean the
that
first
was-
Europeans?
Who do they think of the first?
No,
who
was
do
only
they think of the first
14,000 years
travelers?
ago was the first humans here in North America.
14,000?
Was first humans, you know.
Just think about these people that lived like no one else in a big continent anywhere in the world. They traveled the entire thing, and they had all these little tribes, and they were hunting, and they were all living this crazy sort of hunting, gathering lifestyle, like an entire continent filled with people doing it. It's really
And
fascinating.
by the way, according to a lot of
You know?
scholars, they believe that there were 20 plus million Native
Well,
Americans on the
the
continent.
thing that
Well, there's some
gets
wild
me
numbers
is
thrown around,
the
but yeah.
buffalo. You know, when you the episode that you shot wild buffalo in Mexico, that was a fascinating episode, and it made me really stop and think about when you were describing the imagery of what it used to look like seeing buffaloes roam across the country. There would be like giant, like the shadows from giant clouds, just like the entire land would be covered in buffalo. And this is how it was for these fucking people that lived here for, what, 10,000
Yeah,
years or something?
yeah.
From whenever the ice thawed and became the Great Lakes.
They experienced an apocalypse of sorts, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's like
It was an
fucking
apocalypse.
Avatar.
Yeah.
It's the Avatar movie. I mean,
Yeah.
it really is. It's
Yeah.
crazy shit. If you really stop and think about the fact that the entire continent have all these people living this, what we think of as like a very romantic life,
Mm-hmm.
you know, camping with leather teepees and shit, and out there making fire and dancing and hunting, and like it's pretty nuts. The rest of the country shooting cannonballs off of boats, and you know what I mean. They're developing eyeglasses and
Yep.
and you know navigating the
Telescopes
seas
and,
and
yeah.
giant hemp sails and you know medicine, and these fucking people are riding around.
Weren't even riding on horses, right?
It's like
Yeah, they weren't even until the Spaniards came.
Right.
Yeah, they
it's
were-
funny that so many guys that hunt become interested in like early cultures and
Yeah.
I mean it's obvious that if you like to hunt animals you become interested in hunter gatherer societies, you know, but just to look at it not from that, just from like how great the hunting must have been, but to look at it from other aspects, just like to live with the Plains Indians, the proximity to death is you cannot, unless you live in the most war-torn region of the world today, you probably can't fathom the proximity to death that you lived around.
Yeah.
That you could. It's so weird now. Like our culture is so easy and so soft. I always meet people who are in their 30s and 40s, and they'll be like, "I've never seen a dead person." Like you can go through life and not lay eyes
Yeah,
on a
it's
dead
true.
person.
I didn't see a dead person, I think, like real close up until my grandfather died, and then he was they embalmed him. So it didn't even seem real at all.
Yeah.
They had makeup on
Yeah, it's
him. And
weird.
it's really
Yeah,
strange.
I didn't recognize my grandfather.
Oh, and they're hard, stiff as a rock, and they just seem like these weird empty vessels.
Well, because what they do is, don't they suck you dry? I mean,
Yeah, they drain you,
Well, they
and,
drain it.
and then they use formaldehyde, I guess, and
embalming fluid or whatever.
I mean, don't they do it like with like an IV drip or some shit like that?
Yeah, I don't even know.
I don't know how they get in the
I'm-
veins with the
I
formaldehyde.
think I want to be cremated.
Ugh, yeah, it's fucking gross.
I
Why
want to be
can't we
ditched out
just?
in the woods, man. That's what I'd like the most.
Have you ever seen the Tibetan sky burial?
Yes.
Ugh.
That's
I like the sound of it. whatever it
Jamie,
is.
pull up some
Dude,
images
you not
of the
seen that?
Tibetan
Oh.
sky burial. What they do is they take a body and they quarter it, they chop it up, they smash the bones down, and then they leave it out there for the vultures. And the vultures come in there and
take
essentially pick everything clean.
If I could trust my brothers to do it. Like, I just trust them implicitly.
Right.
But they'll be old. They're older than me, so they'd be too old. But I'd be like, if I knew someone I could really trust, and I said, when I die, I want you just to take my body out to like an area with a lot of bears and stuff, and just chop it up real good and just stir it into the ground, just and like that way. Even though I'd be dead and wouldn't even know what actually happened, it would just be nice to have it be that as I was dying, to be like that will happen to me.
You're going
Would
back.
you even want to be chopped up because they
I don't want
could
people
just
stumbling
leave
across
you
my
there.
remains and calling 911 and stuff.
Oh yeah.
If they just leave you out there, it's like someone's going to then find you. Then they're going to go out there and just be a big investigation, and you know what I mean.
The question about finding animals, about finding dead mountain lions and finding bears, is that because when they know they're going to die, they go somewhere and squirrely and like tuck away where no
Yeah,
one's
I
going
think
to
so,
find them?
man,
Is
yeah.
that it, or is it that's?
No, you see them when you get a bad hit on an animal.
Right.
You get a bad hit on an animal, and if you get a hit on an animal with a bow or firearm, and he lives beyond that initial rush, they're usually going to die tucked away somewhere. They go into the thick stuff.
Yeah.
Under you'll find stuff tucked up under junipers. I was just this year after we went out, I was hunting deer in Montana and found where a beautiful big buck. I just happened to stumble into it, but he had obviously I feel like he'd been hit because he had a perforated antler. Someone had shot at him. My take home. Someone had shot at him and hit that antler with a bullet because he had a big bullet type wound on his antler, like wood bullet hitting wood, but it had cracked his skull plate.
Whoa.
So it didn't kill him immediately. But he was so tucked up under this juniper bush, he just laid up under there to hide, like he knew he was vulnerable, and just died up there. And I think it happens all the time, man.
It seems to make sense, especially hunting.
Because they don't want to get hit by a predator. They know
Right.
they're down.
But what about when like predators die, like bears or big cats?
I found bear skulls, and I've never found a fresh dead enough bear to really tell like what its positioning was when it was dead. But I found a number of like remains of bears, but never where I knew that like this is its spot it had gone to. But like I said, if you get a hit on something with a bow and you don't kill the meat, like you maybe hit it in the liver, hit it somewhere where it's going to live a little while. When you find it, you'll generally find it where it didn't die on the run. It laid down and died. And when they lay down, they're usually pretty careful to get tucked away somewhere. It can be tough to find stuff.
When an animal like this deer dies, if it left its body behind, would eventually something eat the bones of the head as well?
Yeah, you know what you wind up with? You wind up with this right here oftentimes.
The base?
Yep. This is real thick. You'll
So they
see
can't
this.
chew through
They'll
that.
eat this. I remember one time my
So,
brother.
but for the folks at home that are listening, we're talking about the base of a deer's skull. So I guess the base is the hard spot. But
around that frame, and you see that more than anything else. You see like, can I get this where you can see this?
the problem is most people are listening and they're not.
They're not
watching
seeing
it.
anyways. Oh, I'm
most
sorry.
people are getting this off of iTunes
Yeah, I
or
got you.
listening to it on Sirius.
So the part on the part you find most often when you see like a kill that's been consumed is you find where the spinal cord enters the skull, that thick boned area right there extending up into around the base of the antlers, or on a non-antlered game or on horned game, extending up to what would be kind of the space up between the ears. It's just thick and doesn't get consumed. But one time I remember my brother and I killed a cow elk. This is in Montana, southwest Montana, in an area with a lot of grizzlies. We killed a cow elk and went back a week later to see what had happened, and grizzlies had been on it. They had eaten the hide.
Whoa.
They had eaten all the bones. The only part we could find was just a disc of bone with the center of the remaining piece of bone was where the spinal cord passes into the skull, that heavy boned area, the foramen magnum, I think is the word, in a donut-sized chunk of bone like that. And you could tell that it didn't just go away, that it wasn't like it drug it somewhere we couldn't find it, because you could account for all that hide and all that bone in the shit that was left there. It was all there. And it was like a sow and some cubs or something got on it, and it was all still there. That trip, we went and killed another elk and packed that elk out. And when we went back up there later on, the same thing happened to that one.
Isn't it true that grizzlies tend to prefer meat that's kind of rotten too?
That's people say, like, when they kill something, when people watch a bear, black bear or grizzly, make a kill, they'll eat that soft tissue first. So that they rip its belly open, lungs, heart, liver. And generally, it's like what they'll do is when they cover it with grass, like some people even say that somehow when they cover it with a little bit of dirt or cover it in grass, aids decomposition. And they'll lay around on it. They defecate on it. Other things and they'll eat it as it goes back.
To get the bacteria.
So they don't generally, it's said that they don't generally kill it and immediately start eating red meat. A lion's different. Like, lions don't like all that rotten meat. Lions like fresh stuff. But the bears like pretty rotten stuff, man. I remember one time being again, I can't remember what we were doing. We were hunting for something or another, and on Prince Wales Island at the shack we own. I remember watching wolves. You think of wolves like eating fresh meat. I mean, a wolf throughout the year takes 7 pounds of meat a day to keep that thing alive. But we sat there watching. We sat there watching 4 wolves eating salmon. This is after the spawning run. This is in the fall. And they're eating salmon that are so rotten that they're in a pudding-like consistency, a pudding-like state. And just putrid, like I can't even imagine. Like putrid, like it would take, if you walk through one of these areas, one of these stream miles where all these salmon were laying dead, I have a strong stomach. I would need an hour or 2 before I could eat.
Really?
It was just overpowering. And watching these wolves basically lapping up
It's salmon soup.
putting like salmon rot into a pudding-like consistency.
Rotten
And you're
salmon.
like,
Makes
you're
you
like, I can
realize.
try to be an animal. I can like try to think like an animal,
No,
be an
no,
animal,
no.
become animalistic. Not like that.
You need serious enzymes in your stomach and mouth to be able to handle that and
Just-
not get sick too.
Yeah, you can do it. So
Their
they
whole
like
bodies
it.
are
It's just
designed
it's
for
a
that.
mystery.
They're like the cleanup crew.
Yeah.
The bears are like the cleanup crew. The
They
fact
say
that they can
wolves
eat
are-
your bones like that.
Yeah, they
I
just-
didn't know
they
they just
crush 'em
ate-
up, man.
Just eat everything. Swallow
They say
it all.
like hyenas. There's a relationship that there's a relationship in Africa between like cheetahs and hyenas, where cheetahs will make a kill, they can't crush the bone, and hyenas can go in and they can just hang out and wait because they know that when that's done, they'll be the first in there and they can crush bone. And I remember, I don't know if this theory is in fashion anymore, but it used to be in fashion, that early hominids, like early humans, seem to appear in the fossil record outside of Africa at a time that was contemporaneous with the appearance of saber-toothed cats. The thinking being that these saber-toothed cats weren't able to crush bone because of the makeup of their dental structure, their teeth. They couldn't crush bone. And they were really effective predators, and people had become accustomed to following saber-toothed cats to scavenge bone marrow and things that they left behind. I read this long ago. I don't know if that's
It'd be
been
hard to
debunked by other
follow
finds.
a cat.
No, but I mean, just they're leaving kills out there.
Yeah.
And we always hear the term apex predator. There's a lot of benefits to being the apex scavenger.
Yeah.
Which is after the top dog does what he's going to do, who gets to be there first?
right. How much can they eat of an elk?
Yeah, so like if wolves kill an elk and get what they want off it, there's a big benefit to whoever
Comes along behind.
who's
it.
ever the apex
you get to
of the secondary.
stroll up.
Yeah, and it's the
and-
little guys that come later. You know what I mean? It's the little
Jackals.
guys. Yeah, it's the little
And
guys that come
it's-
later. But first, there's like a coyote hanging there, and he's like, when he's done, I'm in there, man. And then
It's-
you guys get in line behind me. You know?
It's fascinating that there's a balance to that system. That the wolves want the fresh meat, but the bears want the rotten meat, and it's really interesting.
Yeah.
It's amazing how the system is so covered. It's got all the bases covered. the area where we were, the breaks, the Missouri River, was like the most hostile place for life I think I've ever been to. In this
wickedly
country.
cold, wickedly hot,
and not much to eat.
no,
Not much there.
no, it's like people that it was a place for carnivores, man. You know, I mean, there's some edible wild plants, but people in there would go in there and historically, I mean, like, you know, Lewis and Clark went through there, and generally people traveling through there would have fantastic luck with hunting. You know, it doesn't look like it's still got a lot of animals today, but something about that river, there's just game down there. You know, things went through there. There's not a lot of water in that area, so it's a reliable place to find water. It's good. It's a great place for hunting, and in other things, a lot of agricultural practices and stuff, not so great. But it's always been a hunter, you know, a place for hunter gatherers.
You clued me into what it used to be. That it used to be a gigantic ocean, and that is really crazy. I'd heard of them finding fossilized ancient teeth of different fish, and I think one of them was a megalodon.
Well, you saw the clamshells we were finding.
Yeah.
I was convinced
Really
it was a
strange.
mining operation.
Yeah, right when we got there,
I was dead serious.
I was kind of
dead serious.
Brian's like,
too.
see those hills? That's from mining. I go, no, man, it's a river here. The
Yeah,
river
the
cut through
reason-
that thing.
The expert over here, the mining expert, Bryan Callen. That's a classic example of me when I get a little excited. I'm like, I know everything. Those are track marks.
But it is interesting. They call it the breaks because it was that you're on, you know, the bench of the Great Plains, and the Missouri Breaks is where the landscape seems to break and crumble away down into the canyon of the Missouri River. And it's just
There it
what
is.
you say is like deeply incised. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, it was a fascinating place, man. What the folks don't, if you don't see this, there's these gray hills, and it's basically these gigantic mountains of silt. And what's really weird is there's like patches of timber and stuff inside of them, but as you're climbing it, like especially after it's rained, it's all mud.
All
so it's
clay.
Yeah, it's this weird, heavy clay stuff.
They call it's an expandable clay. It gets wet and swells, you know. And it does seem, you'd look at it, like you look at the breaks from the water, and it feels like, you use the term loosely, but it feels like you're in the mountains.
Yeah.
It's mountainous. But it's almost like the opposite of mountains. It's
Yeah.
like, you know, mountains would be something that rolls up, like geologic pressures are pushed up. But the breaks is the absence of, it's like the absence of topsoil. It's
Yeah.
like something was like washed away.
yeah,
Well, similar
yeah.
to the Grand Canyon. Like the Grand Canyon is a very rugged place, but it's just because not that you added stuff, you took stuff away.
Well, it was
and dug
easy. It
this
was easy to
pit, man.
climb that stuff. Like I'd look back at how much ground me and Ryan had covered. It was like a lot. Like you'd be like, it doesn't seem like you can climb to the top of that mountain, whatever it was in front of you, and you could because you could get a foothold.
Yes, it's nice that way. Yeah,
You know
until
what
it gets
I mean?
wet, then it's hell,
but,
man.
But one of the things that I just realized is that how difficult it is to actually keep warm unless you're moving. But when you stop moving, you know, and you're outside, it kicks your ass. I mean, did you spend a lot of time cold, or you seem like you?
Yeah, no, I get cold, and that's a thing. Like that's just a basic survival element. That it's like when you're out and conditions are poor, you know, and you have you know, especially cold with some humidity, like it was overcast, it was a little bit wet feeling. Even though it's a very arid, dry area, it was a little bit. There was a lot of humidity on our trip. It's just like the only time you're comfortable is when you're out and moving. But it's a little bit paradoxical because when you get cold and uncomfortable, your inclination is to huddle into yourself, you know? And so it's like harder to get out of your bag in the morning. You're kind of like paralyzed by the cold and paralyzed by the like how uncomfortable you are. But you notice that the minute you start hiking up a hill,
Yeah.
you feel great. And you could be out there all day and you're having a good time, and you stop and you feel like hell, and when you feel like hell, it's like hard to get motivated to do it again. And I think that something that comes from spending a lot of time uncomfortable is just that you get in your head that you just got to move. And I think that when I've hunted in really cold weather, you try not to do anything sitting. You get up in the morning and you go immediately from your sleeping bag to be moving. And when it's time to eat, you just stop for a minute and eat while moving. You would never like stop for mealtime.
Yes,
Because like you just got to be on the move, man. Or else
So
you're
that's the only
uncomfortable.
way you're going to be able to deal
It's
with
like the only
that
time you'll feel good,
cold.
and you feel great.
Yeah,
Yeah.
one of the things that we talked about when we did this trip was that I was never like tired during the day,
Yeah.
where I wanted to take a nap or something. It's
I had a
like
very different energy.
the
experience.
the idea of getting up in the morning and just hiking around all day, but yet all the time completely alert, all the time completely like we were wide awake. Whereas like you know, if you have a regular job or whatever you do, after 5 or 6 hours, you're like, oh, get me the fuck out of here.
Yeah.
You start yawning and stretching.
Right.
I didn't ever feel like I needed to take a nap. And we got into this really weird regular cycle where we were going to bed at like 8 o'clock. And I would go right to sleep. And I'd wake up early. I mean, it was like this weird sort of natural cycle that you
It was
fell
also the first
into.
time we'd ever been living by natural light. And not only natural light, but we weren't around any of our beeping gadgets.
Nothing.
I wonder if that has something to do with it.
Oh, fuck yeah, it
Radio
does.
frequency.
I think it's a huge part, man. I think you find something. I mean, just think about just in a sense, like how much we were just like our physical beings were shaped by that lifestyle. You know, of operating according to daylight hours. You know, being out in search of food. I don't mean to get all like, you know.
New agey.
Yeah,
Nostalgia.
yeah. I don't mean to get all like nostalgia, new age. Those are good words for it. But when you're out doing that kind of thing, you're out like hunting on the land, using your senses, looking for food. You start making sense to yourself. You know, I think you could be like, it's safe to say that there's something about me that really thrives on this. You know, it's like there's something about me that just likes this kind of.
And you
routine.
think
I think
that
most
that's
people find it. You know,
a primal thing that's just ingrained in our system, that from the hunter-gatherer days of war, it's like all a part of us.
I think there's like, I mean, just think about what we know about just like, you know, selective pressures. There's an enormous amount of selective pressure on being able to do that kind of stuff. I think that now people would argue that the new life we have now in technology, we're under new kinds of selective pressures. You know, there's probably right now those of us who are going to thrive, you know, those of us who are going to thrive are adapted to a technological society. But now it's not tied in now to birth. You know, it used to be that we had such low life expectancies and high mortality rates that it was the people that could thrive, the really good hunters, were the ones that were having they had access to females, they had young. Now, you know, it's kind of a given that you're going to have reproductive possibilities. You know, you can be the biggest loser in the world and not do anything, and you can still get people pregnant and have kids. So, like, I think that selective pressures don't work on us now like they used to. But for a long time, we were shaped by, you know, you had to be a productive member of your culture. You had to be a productive member of your clan in order to have the kind of cachet that was necessary to be able to breed women.
When I lived in Massachusetts, was my fishing phase. I went on a phase of my childhood where I go fishing every day. I was a member of the Bass Angler Sportsman Society, the whole deal. I spent all my free time fishing for like a couple of years. Loved it. And it was some fucking visceral thrill, I think, of hooking one of my first fishes. You know what, fishes? I said fishes. Fish. I know what it is, stupid.
Fishies.
But that visceral thrill, whatever it was so shocking to me, you know, that to this day, like, I'll look back and think of that. I'm like, that's got to be some like ancient DNA shit. Like, you got the fish.
Yeah,
like,
man.
it was
Like,
like,
It's like gambling. Like, you don't know what's going to come around the next corner. When I saw my first buck, I think it was the third day, I got so excited because from where I looked at it, looked like it was a world record buck. It was a 50-point buck. Literally, there's a buck, and I had that thing in my scope, and my scope was moving around so much because I got so heated and adrenalined up that I had buck fever. I could not shoot that deer.
Oh, really?
No, I was like, and Ryan had to grab he was like, you're going to injure it, don't, because I was going to start squeezing rounds off blindly, which is wrong.
Yeah.
But I was so excited, you know, and then you get addicted to that. Not only, the other thing you get addicted to is like when you take your binoculars and you're looking for like an antler or an ear or anything.
Glass.
You start looking at things more intensely and differently. Like you have almost new eyes. Like you're looking at things, you know, the way you don't usually look at things.
Oh,
you're
absolutely,
paying attention
man.
to everything. And I think that keys you in. It keys you in. You start forgetting about yourself. That's kind of refreshing.
You see stuff like to look out, to be on the look for game. Like you're out there ostensibly, you're looking for deer. But everything starts to pop to you.
Yeah.
Because you're paying attention to things. And also, another thing I think about all the time, like in a place like the Breaks, is because the landscape might seem to some people redundant. You know? It's like a lot of the same thing. It's just like row upon row upon row of a hill that looks this way and sandstone bluffs. And it's like everything like looks the same. But what you're looking for through all that is just like little subtle differences. And I think it's like the lack of activity at sometimes helps you hone in and look at things much more carefully. And I think it'd be that if you ever notice, if you walk into a really crowded shopping center, walking to like you go down like walk through Times Square or something. You get to the other end, and you sometimes realize that you didn't ever actually really look at anything.
Yeah.
Because you were just
a blur.
It's like it was so much.
Yeah.
You came away with impressions, like a sense of noise, a sense of what you saw, like snippets. But there's nothing that you ever like detailed in on it. And when you're in those places, and I would argue that like the Arctic is a little bit this way. I think areas of Montana this way. It's just like a place that people might look at and be like, oh, it's just nothing. It's just grass.
Right.
But when there's a deer out on that, you can focus in on that thing and experience that thing in a way that you just don't get to do.
To an alien, the difference between a human life living and walking through a mall, that experience, and the human out there on the breaks in the Missouri breaks, like you want to talk about two completely different.
Well, yeah, Juan Enriquez says that he thinks that part of maybe the epidemic of people who have hyper vigilant central nervous systems and are become like weirdly autistic might be that we're evolving because human beings today experience more stimulus in one day than they did in a lifetime.
It only makes sense.
I can believe that.
I mean, how else could you process the information that just comes from a television? What are you designed to really see?
Right.
You're not really designed to sit in front of a fucking television and take in Lord of the Rings. You're not really designed for that. That's all these signals that are firing off your reward systems and getting your dopamine levels and your adrenaline levels up, and you're getting engaged in the action. That's a crazy thing. It's almost like it's a step away from a simulated reality, but it's really moving in that direction. That you get these gigantic thrill rushes from a giant television. It's weird stuff when you stop and think about the impact that it has on the way we visualize our world.
Right.
Because so many people visualize their world as if it's some sort of like a plot in a movie. They see the whole thing like a plot in a movie.
When we were out, did we talk about the Unabomber's manifesto?
Yeah, we did.
There's some interesting elements to that. I remember I took this class. I took this class in college called I think it was just called Political Rhetoric. We read various pieces, everything from Martin Luther King to the Unabomber. And the Unabomber had this point that always, as messed up as the guy was, he had this point that always resonated with me, where he talked about that he looked at like levels of difficulty, and there'd be, I can't remember what way it went, if it went up or down, but let's just say as level 1 difficulty was like no matter how hard you try, you'll fail. Okay, that's like absolute difficult. There'd be level 2 is like if you try super super hard, you have a slight chance of success. On down to if you don't try at all, you'll still succeed. Okay, it would be like these 5 levels of difficulty. And he's like, his gripe with technology was that technology had brought human existence to the level 5. It's like, you don't even have to try to succeed. You're just going to be alive now. Like I said, you're going to be alive, you'll reproduce. You don't need to do anything. It's just, you're just taken care of. We got food surpluses, social safety nets, everything, And he argued that all of our, as neurotic as he was, he argued that all of our neuroses came from that all that energy we were supposed to be spending to maybe survive, was just now spent running amok in our brain.
Totally
and
makes
we
sense.
couldn't handle the free. We can't handle the free time that technology allows us, and that's why he advocated for like this.
Human beings definitely need conflict.
This reactionary existence where you'd go back to like this, an agrarian,
Well,
in his mind, environmental.
Or just try to get your black belt in jiu-jitsu.
Yes,
That's plenty.
Bingo. That's what I'm talking about. I think you can
really
avoid
hard
it.
goals.
Yes, yes. You need tasks. You need things to do.
Learn a language.
I'm most happy when I'm going like this. That's when I'm most happy when I'm going.
No, I'm with you.
If I'm not involved in something, if something's not stimulating me, if something's not, whether it's training, doing something different, trying something. The hunting experience was a perfect example of that. Like the ability to go and do the show and what you guys brought to the table was so much better than anything we could have ever come up with on our own. I mean, the idea that you were going to take us in this fucking 5-day camping thing with no cell phones and no internet connection, and that's completely different than anything we would have ever done. If we just said, "All right, let's go hunting," like, what do you want to do?
We would have probably
We're going to hire somebody. How does that work?
Yeah, if we had both caught a deer, we'd be like, "Oh, time to go home."
Yeah, it's raining, dude. This sucks. Let's go eat. Let's go get some steak.
I'm so glad we did, and I'm so glad looking back on it. It took 5 days.
The first day we get there, pouring rain, and I knew it was fucking for real when we stopped at one of the spots where Lewis and Clark camped. if you have any sense of history at all, and you sort of try to take this in, like how bizarre it really is that several hundred years ago, before the inventions of radio and the camera, there were some fucking people that were traveling across the entire river. They were going down the Missouri River.
crazy.
They were traveling across the whole country.
Crazy.
And they were right there camping where you're going to camp.
And it's still like there's some notable things that are different, but it still is kind of the
Same
same.
thing.
It's very reminiscent of it. And there's a friend, there's a writer I've always admired a lot, the writer Ian Fraser, and he's written a lot about the American West, and we were on that river one time, and he was just saying like he just likes it that it happened. Like there's a place like Lewis and Clark came here and camped here, and he's like, and then nothing ever really happened ever again.
Yeah.
And when I think about that, I often like point out that you can go to sites, you can go to places. I was one time. It's funny because I was on the phone with Ian Fraser one time, and I was telling him. He said, "Where are you?" And I was in New York, and we were trying to meet up. And I explained to him that I was out in front of this bar, like the White Horse or something. And he's like, Dylan Thomas drank himself to death and died, right?
That's right.
He was like, "What corner are you on?" I said, "Well, I'm at this and such."
I've been in that booth.
Yeah, and he's like, "Yeah, Dylan Thomas collapsed, drank himself to death there." And on one hand, it's like, wow, that's amazing. But then you think like all the other stuff that happened, people getting hit by cars and people getting broken up with and falling in love and like all these layers upon layers of other activities that went on there, in some way dilutes it. It becomes hard to picture. But to camp where Lewis and Clark camped and look out, you go like, no, I get it, man.
Yeah.
Right.
It's not abstract for me. Like
No.
I can
And we were
understand
kind of, even
a
though
little
we
bit
had-
about what was on their mind.
Even though we had
Yeah.
stoves and stuff, you're still kind of living and feeling what they were feeling.
Yeah,
The
you get
cold,
the boat in the
the
morning.
darkness.
Ryan Callen just texted me, heard us talking about him.
Go,
He
Ryan.
didn't get a chance to listen to the podcast yet. I'm sure it was great.
He's a good man.
Yeah, that's funny.
So
But that was.
but it's very
for
similar.
us.
Get in the boat, cover some ground in the boat, get out, pitch camp, try to secure meat through hunting.
Yeah.
Get back in the boat, pitch camp.
Yeah, all in all, we went. What was it? 40-something miles down the river.
It was 38 or no more than.
We went a long way because I remember
40-some
that
miles.
trip back, me and Toad back. I was so cold. and Dan Doty was really cold. I go, "What's wrong with you?" He goes, "I'm really cold." I pulled a sleeping bag out of and we just wrapped up because it was like 12 degrees.
It was kind of ridiculous.
I was watching that. It was so cold, like it was 12 degrees, and I was such a baby. I'm like,
You know what? I got lucky. I was with him, and he told me American Indian stories the whole way.
And you stayed
I didn't
warm.
even bother me,
Kept
man.
warm.
I'm
Wow.
telling you, 8 hours of
warm
American
through
Indian
minutes.
stories or whatever the fuck it was.
But cold
I was
around water is
freezing.
different than cold.
Oh.
around. It's like
Yeah.
the minute something
Wet,
dude,
It's just
I
like
was
the
watching.
intrusion of water. Like you get like a little bit of moisture in your gloves. It just becomes a different game.
I was
you know?
watching those guys play football in the playoffs in Denver, and it was -3 with the wind chill factor, and they were
really?
playing football in short sleeves. And Ray Lewis just sitting there in short sleeves, even on the bench, he's just sitting there like this, going, just thinking to himself. I'm like, dude, you got no sleeves on. It's -3 with the
Are
wind
you
chill.
serious?
Yes,
What was the actual temperature?
it was 9 degrees.
Oh, so it was cold.
Cold,
Cold.
and then
The-
-3 with the wind chill. And
thing-
these guys are out
They
in
still
short
play-
sleeves,
they can
hitting
still
each
play
other,
like that?
hitting each other.
That ball's got to sting your hands at that temperature.
You think?
They have gloves on.
Oh, there you go. That's
I don't
a good
know,
idea.
man.
The river is so fucking shallow in some spots. That's the one thing that was really surprising is that we would bottom out. I
Yeah.
was like, this is
Yeah.
a really fragile ecosystem.
That's
Yeah.
one thing that's probably a lot different. Of course, that river is heavily dammed now. So
Is that
where
what
we
it
were
is?
in that area, you got dams above you, and you got dams below you. So,
Oh.
but I mean, you used to be able to run it with river boats, like paddle wheel boats, you know?
Right.
But it was a confusion of channels. It took a lot of skill to be able to navigate, but there was a continuous navigable channel. And when you dam those rivers, now you get a lot of sedimentation. So the river would at times get scoured out. You know, you get a big flood in the spring. You know, snow's coming out of the mountains, coming out of the Yellowstone area and stuff. It would come down there and just gouge that area and carry all that sediment away. But the dams do flood control, and they form another function, erosion control. So you get built up over time, just mud, silt in that river. And so the river is a lot different than it used to be.
And the river,
As much as some of the surrounding topography is very similar and in some ways, in some regards, untouched, that river is now a creation of damming, you know.
oh wow.
Yeah.
And the river goes to the ocean.
That river heads. When Lewis and Clark, we were talking about earlier, Lewis and Clark. So Lewis and Clark, when they got dispatched on that on their trip, and they went up. I can't remember if they left in 1802 or 1804. 1802 or 1804. They went up, and one of the things they had many tasks that they were supposed to do, but one of the primary tasks Jefferson gave them was to find the headwaters of the Missouri. So people knew the Missouri was a major artery, but where did the Missouri begin? And wherever it began, was there a viable way to go up and over out to the Pacific? When they went up, they found the headwaters of Montana, or the Missouri, just upstream from where we were. And the headwaters they discovered were three rivers they named. They named the Jefferson, the Gallatin, and the Madison. So it was the Secretary of State, Secretary of Treasury, and the President, I think is what it was. They named those three rivers. And that's what heads that river. So those rivers head, one, like the Yellowstone heads up Yellowstone Lake, Yellowstone National Park. I'm sorry, the Yellowstone goes another way. But the Missouri and Jeff head in Montana, and then they go and flow all the way out to the Gulf of Mexico.
Wow.
People now argue, we were so familiar with the Mississippi. The Mississippi was named. We didn't know that much about the Missouri because people have been dinking around the Mississippi long before they were dinking. The Europeans have been messing around the Mississippi long before the Missouri. Hydrologists later and geologists later argued that the Mississippi wasn't named properly. That by any estimation, it would be that the Missouri picked up the Mississippi and not vice versa. That where those two rivers came together, like the Missouri is a true continental river. It's draining all the way from the mountains of Montana out to the Gulf of Mexico, and the Mississippi heads like up in Minnesota, So they argued that that's actually what went on. So the Mississippi is now the Mississippi by name, but in like a physical sense, where you're looking, the Mississippi is the Missouri.
I think the riverboat gambling is one of the craziest ideas ever. That they would allow you to gamble if you got in something floating, and then they just pushed you
so
out
weird.
there.
But it has to be on state lines, though, right?
Isn't it ridiculous?
What does
though?
that mean? So it's got to be in between state lines?
Yeah,
So it's like a
you're in
neutral
like
limbo
You're
land?
in like
It's a gray area.
Yeah,
between
it's like
states.
you're in like a no man's land because it's bordered by it's like you got one state on one side, one state on the
never
other
gambled.
side.
I've always
Never
proposed
gambled, man.
that. I think that we should have a gray area between all states,
Yeah,
where
just
you
badness
could
can happen.
do anything you want. You could eat mushrooms, you can get a hooker, you could do whatever you want. Anything shy of murder and robbery.
Yeah.
Just a Wild West gray area where there's very few laws.
It would be so
just
crowded.
to try it.
It would be
Everybody
so
knows.
crowded.
Everybody
Yeah,
knows
you
where it
can
is.
Look across the Mississippi. Why does that get to be the lawless zone? Like the Great Lakes, you can't even see it. It could be
Yeah.
a massive area of utter lawlessness, but there's no you can't go out there and do crazy stuff that you can't do on the bank.
Yeah,
can't
but
go,
I'm
like,
just saying a
between-
little gray area.
You also got to
no,
get
that
a
would be
boat.
like
every
that would be
state.
you could have a whole resort out in the middle
Well,
of Lake Michigan.
on
a whole
boats
hedonism
or just
resort.
on land too?
Just on land. Anywhere where there's a border. It's fucking,
Oh my
who
God.
knows?
You just
Whatever.
have towns. You'd have
It's
towns like
little
Tijuana.
strip, man.
Yeah.
You just have Tijuana towns.
Well, the idea is being bandied about by like some really rich investors that they want to build an artificial city that floats, and they want to put it out in international waters. And the idea is
like
that
the
they-
International Space Station, but
something like that they would be able to do this and make their own, like the utopian society. They're like tired of this nonsense, this libertarian ideals. Everybody wants everybody who joins this venture to be able to support themselves and to decide as a community that we could all work this out. They're gonna make a gigantic island and push that bitch out into the ocean. Wow. But good luck not getting robbed.
there's a couple
Well,
problems.
you'd have to have
good
Yeah,
luck.
before they get all set up, and then a
Yeah.
Somali pirate show.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, don't do it in the Indian Ocean.
Well, don't dudes get like fucking kidnapped all the time
That's
out
why I
there?
don't go sail. That's why, we went sailing in the
Sailing.
Caribbean and the
Jesus.
Indian Ocean. Listen, dude, people get robbed, killed, and raped and thrown overboard all the time. Not me, man.
Yeah,
I'll go
in the
sailing
ocean?
if I have a couple Navy vessels full of Navy SEALs following me around.
Couple?
Otherwise, I don't understand people who are so trusting. Like we went there, not me, dude.
My parents lived in the Bahamas on a sailboat. They lived there for a while. They took a sailboat from Florida all the way down to the Bahamas and lived in various spots on the sailboat.
Yeah.
And I was like, you guys are fucking
Not me.
crazy.
after you were
Yeah,
gone or
yeah.
before you were around.
I was
You can't be.
long
I don't want to be in
gone.
the middle of the ocean with no backup, and some pirates come up. It happens all the time.
It definitely can happen. I mean, the odds are pretty small if you look at how many ships are out there. But if it happens, you're fucked.
Yeah.
And it could happen. I mean,
afraid of the ocean
some rich
anyway.
couple get kidnapped really recently. Happens all the time. There's always some new story.
killed.
some-
I'm because I grew up, in a landlocked state, man. Like for me, you guys might have had that feeling of, like being in the breaks. You had that feeling of kind of like not overwhelmed, but like humbled by the landscape in some way. For me, like I'm so new to maritime stuff that for me to be out on the ocean, like I didn't grow up like looking out at an ocean.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And for me now, when I'm out on the ocean, I'm always like, this is serious business, man. You know what I mean? I get that feeling of just like, holy cow, man.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah, like when you get out where you can't see land, to me, that's when I start getting that like a very nice, uncomfortable feeling.
My buddy used to, for a living, used to take rich guys. They'd buy a sailboat, and then you'd have to sail it to them wherever they were. But the problem was that when you do a winter run along the Atlantic, that's storm season. So very few people want to actually take the sailboat when you buy it in the winter and bring it to you because they're going to get caught in storms. My buddy did that. My buddy used to just and he'd take a 32-foot yacht, and he got caught in a storm off of San Francisco in the winter, and it was at night, and he had strapped himself in, and he was trying. You turn the boat because he was getting 20-foot swells that were submerging the boat. So he would get submerged under the ocean and then pop out. Yeah.
Oh, really?
And he did that for 14 hours.
God.
And
my
not only did he do
God.
it 14 hours alone, but he had his crew underground because he was the captain. For 14 hours he did that, and he radioed for a guy to get him, but the guy wasn't experienced enough. So then they had to radio a guy who did it a lot in Alaska to tow them back in. And they finally get that guy on the phone. I guess he flies in. He gets in his boat now. He goes out, hooks onto him, and tows him to safety. 14 hours at night. I said, how did you know to look? He goes, I'd have to listen for when the swell was going to hit me because I couldn't see it. So I'd have to listen.
God.
I hear just, and I go, and it would just, and I said, were you cold? He goes, fuck yeah. He was in a wetsuit. He goes, fuck yeah, you're cold. You're really cold, man. Your face and hands feel like they're going to fall off.
Yeah, growing up near the ocean, you get too used to it. You don't really take it into consideration how crazy it is. But I had a friend from Oklahoma who never saw the ocean before, and we were in Texas, and he went to the ocean, and he was like, he had just gotten back from the moon. You know, I mean, he might as well have been on another planet.
I know exactly.
I asked my friend if he
man.
wears a life jacket. He goes, well, there are two different schools. I go, what do you mean? He goes, some do, some don't. I don't. I said, why? He goes, well, I believe that if you get washed overboard, you're probably injured to begin with. It's much better just to drown really quickly than to sit there and die of hypothermia for 16 hours later. He said, or sharks come get you. He said, they can be right on top of you. They're not going to find you a lot of times.
My friend who went to the ocean, he had to take a cigarette before he described it. Like he sat down, he goes, man. He lit his cigarette, took a big breath. He goes, where do I begin, man?
He had to conjure his most descriptive powers.
To him, because he was in his 30s, to just see the ocean for the first time. He really doesn't leave Oklahoma much. And all of a sudden he's in Houston, made a trip down to the ocean. He's standing out there watching it. It's like, it's got to really fuck your mind
David
up.
Blaine, I hope I'm not saying something out of turn, but David Blaine, his trick, he wanted to cross the Pacific in a bottle. And so the problem was, and he went out on a catamaran in a really thick storm, and people were like getting bandied about, bleeding, knocked out. And he's like, I'm good with any of that. He doesn't care. Then he got in the water with great whites. He's got video of him swimming with great. I don't want to tell too much. I hope he doesn't. But anyway, the point is that the guy said, Sam Sheridan, who just, by the way, his book is great. Sam Sheridan goes, dude, if you get caught in a bottle. If you were in a bottle in the Pacific, you can get caught in a storm for 72 hours because he's cross Pacific.
He's got to move with the storm.
You'd be tossing around in that bottle for 72 hours. That's a shitty way to die. That's a shitty way to die.
Yeah,
bro.
because you're not going to be able to keep up with the rolls for 72 hours. You're eventually going to get dropped on your head. You're going to nod out for a second, and you're going to get elevated and dropped on your fucking head.
Right.
And you're going to hit that thick glass wall, and it's going to cave your stupid face in.
I got a friend that I wrote about in my first book who grew up in San Diego, and one of his first jobs, he worked on a tuna boat and went out, and the tuna boat sank. And one of the guys he was with drowned. He stayed on a hatch cover, and with a guy he was moored with drowned, and he managed to keep this guy's body with him the whole time.
Oh my God!
And eventually, they were pulled out, and he was just done with it. He went to vet school. Didn't go back out in the ocean anymore, and changed his birth date to the day that he got plucked out, and now
Wow.
celebrates that as his birthday.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Yeah, so now like every year he has a big party on the
That
day he
makes
got
sense,
plucked out of
huh?
the ocean.
That's
And he's
pretty
a lawyer.
badass.
He's a veterinarian up in Saint Helena in the Napa Valley now. He's just like, I'm done with the water, man.
Wow, good for him. Fuck the ocean. The ocean
right.
can suck it. The ocean's
Fuck
fucking
yes, dude.
terrifying, man. But
That's hilarious.
yeah. But Lennon, man, thanks again, man. Thanks for taking us there. We had the fucking time of our lives. It was really
It was
cool.
good, man. I look forward to getting you guys back out. And that's a sweet looking rack.
Yeah, it's awesome. This,
And you know what? People are down. Can I say one last thing?
yeah, please.
The issue of hunting trophies always comes up, and I decorate my home with skulls and antlers and horns and stuff like that, and people are down on trophy hunting. But I think that experience like that, like you went out, you had a legit hunt, you ate all the meat. It's like now, like that thing becomes like an emblem of a lot more, and it's like I think trophies are cool. You know what I mean? I think that having something like that, it's like one word for it would be a trophy, and another word would be like a memento or
Yeah.
a talisman. I don't know. It's just
The-
like it's you'll always look at it and remember.
He took
that.
a lot of cactus quills for that.
Yeah, man, you'll
Yeah,
always look at it and
yeah.
remember a whole set of experiences. You know, it's not some shallow thing like, oh, I'm such a man that I'm now going to pose his head up. You know,
Right. No, I didn't think of it that way at all. You know, there's so much controversy attached. I don't have to tell you this to the hunting experience, to the idea of killing your own food. There's so much craziness on both sides. You know, but the people that are anti-hunting are the people that eat meat and wear leather and are still anti-hunting.
Yeah.
It's shocking how many of those people there
Yeah.
are. It's such a weird thing.
So
I can
weird.
completely understand your wife's point of view of not wanting to go and do the killing yourself, but the idea that there's something wrong with the people who do it. One of the things that I saw about this Newtown, Connecticut thing, one of the tweets that I read a lot of crazy tweets, but one of them I read where this guy said, if you're a hunter, tough shit, get a new hobby, no guns. And it was like hashtag no guns.
Yeah.
And I was like, what kind of crazy nonsense is that?
Well,
Like,
yeah,
if
the
you're a
idea is-
hunter, get a new hobby. The idea that these people are willing to get, because of crazy people, whatever many, to get all rights to own firearms stripped away to the point where you can't hunt anymore, and the idea that someone would just propose that.
Tim
that's
Ferriss had
the
to-
problem with voting. The problem with voting is that guy gets to vote too.
Well, Tim Ferriss posted a cool article by somebody, I can't remember who it was, and I read it, and it was about, he said guns actually have a lot to do with why there isn't a lot of violence. They neutralize violence in some ways. It's sometimes in the sense that if you don't have guns, the guy with the biggest knife and the strongest guy is going to do what he wants. And guns have always been sort of in a society, they keep the strongest guy with a knife from raping somebody in front of 12 people. Somebody's going to shoot that fucking guy.
Yeah, I mean,
so-
you can't have society in this form without some form of weaponry.
Yeah.
You have to be able to protect people against aggressive people from somewhere else.
That's right.
Whether it's a local threat or a threat on a boat from another fucking country like Columbus and his boys.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just, if you can't control them, if you can't stop them, they overcome the same way the Europeans overcame the American Indians. I mean, it's really the same exact thing you're talking about. You're talking about people being overcome by other people.
That's right.
There's only one way to prevent
With
that.
technology.
People that are armed. That's the only way to prevent that. Is the threat of retaliation is too strong for one band of evil people to just go in and take over a town or whatever with guns.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, how could you stop it? If the whole world was disarmed, then you're talking about like some sort of
Look at Africa. Look at the Congo right now with people like Joseph Kony and his group and stuff who come in. They've got military-grade weapons. They come into a village where nobody has
Yeah.
any weapons, do whatever they want.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
mayhem, yeah.
I mean, the utopia obviously would be no one has guns, and if you go hunting, then you use guns, I guess.
Yeah,
You
but
know? I mean,
by
is
the
that
way,
the utopia?
what if you did have that? Then you'd have guys like Shane Carwin and Nate Marquardt who would be the kings and call the shots because I'm not going to fight those guys. We'd have to band together as like 6 guys and be like, let's go.
It's better to have. It's sort of a balancing act,
Yeah.
and it's better to have some sort of an ability to defend yourself physically, and then society can move on.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can't defend yourself physically just because of your mere size, like, or you're dealing with some Shaquille O'Neal type dude that you just physically, there's nothing you can do about it, then a gun comes into play.
Well, they always say
And then
that they say conflict resolution in any society becomes paramount. Like in a society, you have to have a mechanism for conflict resolution because inevitably there will be conflict among men. And so how you mete out justice and how you keep order is very important for any society, if you think about it.
Inevitably, there's going to be conflict. I
Yeah.
think the thing we're missing is teaching young kids how to fight. I really do. I think it's a gigantic piece of the puzzle that we're missing in the way we raise human beings. I'm not saying everybody needs it. I'm not saying it should be required. But I'm saying that having it like readily available all the time for kids in school to teach them a way to get out their aggression and to
Or I mean, not
calm
just necessarily defense, but also just like dealing with.
Well, that's what video games
I think
are.
it would
They say
stop.
video games
I think
are-
it would stop bullying. I really do. I think if you taught kids martial arts, it would stop almost all bullying because kids would be involved in competition, and when they're involved in competition, they're not thinking about picking on weak people.
Yeah.
They're thinking about how to advance their game so they can compete. And whether it's jiu-jitsu or wrestling or boxing or any of those martial sports, I think if you teach as many people as you can how to do it, you're going to have a much more polite society. And
that outlet's very strong. That's why they say video games are so popular. It's an outlet for aggression. For
but
war games,
our problem in this country is not a gun problem. In my opinion, everybody keeps saying it's a gun problem. Guns are a part of a mental health problem. It's a mental health problem.
I would think so. But people look at that as being something they can achieve easily.
Yeah.
But the thing that I've been thinking a lot about lately on the issue is that it's the way that people look at like constitutional freedoms. And I think there's a reluctance, on the right. There's traditionally this reluctance to sort of disregard First Amendment liberties sometimes, and on the left there's this tendency to want to like disregard Second Amendment liberties.
Right.
And in the same way that someone, this guy said, "Oh, you know what? Get tough. If you hunt, tough. Figure something out."
Yeah.
You could look and say, you know what? The internet is used, for all these things, and like 9/11 plotters communicated over the internet and various things. So if you use the internet, for communication, screw you. We're getting rid of it. It would like no one would ever make the case like
Right.
it can be used for evil, therefore it should go away.
Right.
It's just not.
It's a very
and
good
so
point.
You want to be in a situation where I'm like, for me, it's like First Amendment stuff's extremely important to me. Second Amendment issues are extremely important to me. Like I feel that just to do reactionary measures against our amendment rights in thinking we're going to solve some problem isn't right. The same way I don't think it's the right to suppress freedom of speech in order to like solve a problem that might have come out of the right of assembly or that might have come out of freedom of the press, that someone incited violence through the press, so they should be shut down. Nor do I think that firearms owners should be shut down.
I think it's a very complicated issue, and I think it also fosters some cookie-cutter type thinking sometimes, where the people on the left just follow that predetermined pattern of behavior, and people on the right follow that.
Yeah.
And no one
Yeah.
is,
Take sides.
Yeah, everybody's taking a side on it, and I
as
think
opposed to approaching it as a problem to solve.
yeah. Look, there's obviously something going on. What is the problem? The problem is that everybody has guns. That way, you can't stop me. Everyone would shoot the guy if he tried to run into a school and shoot people. Is that the solution, or is the solution that you have to pull all the guns out of people's homes and then only the military has the guns? Well, the people aren't going to be comfortable with that either. So what is the correct solution? And how much is mental health taken into it? How much are SSRIs and whatever these fucking antidepressants are doing to disturbed people? There's a lot of people out there that need antidepressants. It makes their life better. I've heard that. I believe it. But I also know Phil Hartman. I knew Phil Hartman very well. And his wife was on antidepressants when she shot and killed him and then killed herself. So, I know that they want a settlement with Zoloft. I know that stuff creates psychotic behavior. I know it does. It's pretty much proven. When you start having to pay off giant sums, it's pretty proven that there's something fucked up going on with antidepressants and the human mind. And
Well,
it's not
also-
always, but it's not everybody. I think there's people that their brain is just not set up correctly. I think there's a whole bunch of people in this world where they got a shitty roll of the dice and their brain is just not working good. And I think if you want to medicate those people and just start throwing chemicals at the problem, you might not always be doing the right thing. And when you do that and you have a really disturbed individual, like it's in the case of over and over again with some of these shooters, the hypothesis is that these drugs are allowing these kids to much more easily perform horrific tasks because they've sort of changed reality.
Their
for
body
them.
chemistry. Or
Yeah, well, the way they interact with the mind, that they allow you to accept things in a way that you would normally have like giant red psychological flags going off left and right. Instead, it just allows you to like deal with shit, and that's one of the ways that for some folks it helps them overcome depression. It's like these things are very unusual because one of the things that I've learned talking to my friends that are on these antidepressants, including people that absolutely need them and then people who have tried them and gave them away, is that they never know exactly which one's going to work for you. And they'll switch medications on you. They're like, okay, let's try this. How's that one? And then a lot of it is just everybody's got a different setup, and what works for you might not work for him. And the only way to tell is they got to fucking try shit out on you. I have a real hard time with that when you're dealing with psychotic people that might have access to assault rifles.
Sure.
Like when you have those things together, and then you find out that 90% of all these school shootings are either someone who's on withdrawal from SSRIs or someone who's on them. 90%.
And not only that, they were talking. They had these mental health experts on. They were talking about how, like Jared Loftner, the guy who shot the Arizona congressman, he had been symptomatic for 10 years. I mean, he was psychotic and symptomatic. And it was very clear that, and the problem was, he said that there's, in the law, you can't incarcerate somebody against their will unless they are.
Hey, I would love to hear this, but we've got to wrap this up.
Yeah.
It's 3 o'clock. Or it's it's 3 hours in.
Hello.
And at 3 hours in, the show turns into a pumpkin.
There we go.
What happens is the audio, when it gets too long, gets fucked somehow in the process. So the only way we could do it is 3 hours. Yeah, so we turn into a pumpkin. We want to thank Onnit.com for sponsoring the podcast. If you go to ONNIT and use the code name Rogan, you will save 10% off any and all supplements. We also want to thank Audible.com. And if you go to Audible.com/Joe, you will get 30 free days and a 1 free audio book. And thanks, Steve Rinella. And you can follow Steven Rinella on Twitter. It's not PH like a pussy. It's V.
Good old-fashioned
like
Steve.
a vampire. Okay,
Yeah.
Steven Rinella. Follow him on Twitter and pick up his excellent book, which I'm really enjoying, by the way, Meat Eaters. So you're a really good descriptive writer, man.
Great writer,
you really
great
bring people into the moment. It's a great book. I really, really enjoy it.
I appreciate you saying that.
And it's called Meat Eater. And look, we're going to do this again. The show is going to air sometime in April, right?
Yes, sir.
So come back again. We'll do another one of these fucking podcasts. This time we'll.
I'll bring some bear meat and deer meat and whatnot.
Yeah, man.
Beautiful.
Mail us that smoked bear meat.
Yeah, and thanks for taking us out again, man. We had the time of our lives. Can't wait to do it again.
It's awesome.
And so go buy his book, you fucks. And is it available on Audible? Do they have an audio version?
No,
of it?
man, they don't.
I looked
We
for
gotta
it.
do
I
that.
had to
Such
read
a
it.
bummer.
I actually
My
had
last
to
book
read
was
it.
audio, but the audio thing, like, I don't know. People are kind of backing away from it in a weird way.
All right, you dirty freaks. Tomorrow, Opie from Opie and Anthony, Greg Hughes will be here. And then Wednesday, the great Duncan Trussell will join us. So thank you. And that's the end of the show. So go find some other shit to do. Holla.